Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel Comics. Crossing into Krynn, I am the master of technology. Chapter 31. Hee hee. Then the black shadow smiled, and as the curtains blew again, there was no one in the dark shadow. In the villa, Kingpin was once again the only one left. From beginning to end, it was as if Kingpin was having a conversation by himself. Then, in just half a day, news spread throughout New York City about the biopharmaceutical company AbbVie's disregard for human life and unauthorized human trials. Nearly every reputable media outlet has uncovered a trove of dirt about AbbVie biopharmaceuticals sent to them by anonymous contributors. After reading the extremely explosive content, every media outlet invariably replaced the printed newspapers. Then put it on the homepage. As for AbbVie biopharmaceuticals, Top 10 pharmaceutical companies in the United States. What is that? For them, big news and how to increase the sales of newspapers are the most important. Under the bombardment of dozens of media, all New Yorkers knew about it in less than half a day. The CEO of AbbVie Biopharmaceuticals also immediately stood up and clarified that Alfred Gerard was responsible for the company's pharmaceutical-related decision-making power. In front of all the media, he announced that he would be stripped of his status as CEO and that he would be held accountable. Its processing efficiency is so fast that it is simply unheard of. Even many people had just seen the scandal of AbbVie Biopharmaceutical Company in the afternoon. Before they started to criticize AbbVie Biopharmaceutical Company, they had already seen the results of the company's handling. When people are angry, there is no one to turn to. But even so, the stock price of AbbVie Biopharmaceutical Company is falling rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. You must know that there may be a shortage of angel investors in the United States, but there is no shortage of vampires. Countless financial street tycoons who learned the news first, and after seeing this rare opportunity, began to spend huge sums of money to short AbbVie Biopharmaceutical Company. Just to cut a huge piece of cake in this gluttonous feast. Evening. On the other side, after returning to the company to handle everything in the company, Killian came to Miami's laboratory island. After going through many levels, Killian finally came to the underground laboratory. After opening the door of the laboratory and looking at the busy figure inside, even Killian, who already boasted that he had seen a lot, couldn't help but feel startled. You won't tell me that you have been busy since yesterday, right? Looking at Samuel Stern's hair that had turned into a chicken coop and his bloodshot eyes, for a moment, Killian even wondered whether the other party had eaten the sun step and turned into a zombie, but looking at Killian immediately asked the other party's busy figure in front of the experimental equipment. Boss, are you here? My God, let me tell you, this is simply God's treasure house. It's amazing, you know. On it, I even see the road to the future. After seeing his boss looking at him through the bulletproof glass, Samuel was stunned for a moment and then introduced to him with excitement what he had discovered throughout the day and night. Following the direction of the other party's finger, Killian saw the data on the computer nearby. On it is clearly recorded the development of the sun staircase flowers by Samuel during this period. When I was extracting the material from this plant yesterday, I accidentally discovered that it has powerful and rapid healing properties. And that's not the most important thing. After extracting its plant cells, I found that its telomeres also have the function of self-regeneration. And I also catalyzed it to varying degrees, and I found that every time its cell divides, it will be protected by a certain substance without affecting the telomeres of the cell itself, and then it will perfectly replicate the previous cell. Quote, you must know that we humans are limited in lifespan because the telomeres of cells are lost during replication. And it doesn't have such a restriction, if I can study the substance inside the cells of the plant that protects it. Eternal life. When he came to the end, Samuel Stern looked at Killian, who was separated by a glass in front of him, with an excited and crazy expression, and said with his red eyes, you know, that is eternal life. Now he found it on a plant. If he was given time, he believed that he would study it thoroughly. And when the time comes, all mankind will live forever, and he will be the leader of this era. At this moment, Samuel couldn't wait to continue his research. For this reason, he didn't even know that his body was already exhausted from hunger. The powerful mental stimulation had allowed him to ignore the physical hunger feedback. Dr. Samuel, although I don't want to dampen your enthusiasm, I have to say that it can only make people live longer at best, but it is far from the level of immortality. And doing experiments is a continuous and long-term behavior. In your current state, it is difficult for me to trust you with this project. Looking at Samuel Stern in front of him, who had been dazzled by the plant properties of the sun staircase, Killian frowned and then said, "Sorry, I lost my temper, boss. But, really, its potential is far greater than I said. Although I also know that it is impossible for people to achieve immortality. After all, if this is the case, the tribe that owns this plant that you mentioned before, boss, will not be extinct. But there is a unique substance in the cells that can provide protection for telomerase, as long as we understand it thoroughly. Then it's just the difference between a bicycle and a four-wheeler. You can already see the road, the rest just needs to be done step by step." After hearing Killian's words, the stunned Samuel Stern's eyes immediately regained clarity, and then he spoke to Killian in front of him. "Okay, I understand, but you also need to pay attention to rest. I will send a team over tomorrow and let you take charge. You only need to focus on the general direction, and let them do some detailed experiments and the like. Don't do it like today, working day and night. Don't end up falling down before the project is completed. Now I order you to go and rest quickly." Looking at the workaholic Samuel in front of him, Killian said forcefully. At this moment, he fully experienced what it was like for a big force to have a capable subordinate. "Okay, boss, don't worry, I'll go to rest right away." After hearing Killian speak like this, Samuel also felt the protests coming from his stomach and spirit at the same time, and then looked at the flowers in front of him with regret and said. At this moment, Samuel couldn't help but wish that he could be alone without eating, so that he could stay rooted in work and concentrate on research here. Then, after talking to Samuel for a while and telling him to take care of his health, Killian ended today's trip and returned home. Bye-bye. Check all the information about Alfred Gerard, especially find a way to get into his computer. I want it now. After returning home, Killian sat in front of the computer, eating a simple dinner while speaking to Dubai in the room. Under his conscious transformation, except for the artificial intelligence Dubai at the door, the entire room is now equipped with Dubai's smart chips. In other words, Killian now is equivalent to having Jarvis in Tony Stark's beach house in Iron Man 3. It's just that it is limited by current technology and networks. One is network speed and the other is signal transmission, both of which have great limitations. It can be said that every step he asks Dubai to do now is summarized step by step, rather than by asking him to draw inferences from one instance to another. Just like Siri and ChatGPT before Killian traveled through time, someone needs to constantly try and feed the intelligence a lot of data and conversations to expand his intelligence. In this way, over time, it will become a pseudo-artificial intelligence. It's just that every word spoken is actually a dialogue programmed in advance by the person involved. Sir, according to the database information query, Alfred Gerard was born in. In addition, social news was detected today about Alfred Gerard, who was dismissed from his position at ABB Biopharmaceutical Company because he was responsible for human trials, which caused great public repercussions. In addition, according to the first agreement, restrictions can be broken when ordered by Mr. Killian. Now by retrieving Alfred Gerard-related image data, he is now on 3rd Avenue in New York, and the relevant video has been released. After hearing Killian's instructions, Dubai, the intelligence system located in the hall, immediately reported the message through Killian's voice not far away. After he finished speaking, the TV not far away lit up, and then the surveillance camera with Alfred Gerard was displayed. If an outsider sees this scene at this moment, they will find that the surveillance here is obviously the police station's road surveillance system. And as if to let Killian see more clearly, several surveillance cameras that could illuminate Alfred Gerard began to zoom in at the same time. Looking at Alfred Gerard on TV, Killian just felt a sigh of relief. This guy who was still aggressive in the morning and wanted to find someone to kill him has become like this before he started to take any action. Retrieving useful information about Alfred Gerard, all listed on my computer through text. I want to see what's going on behind this. After thinking for a while, Killian couldn't help but let out a glimmer of light in his eyes, and then he came to his computer and said to Dubai. Then, Killian saw a text begin to be created on the desktop of his computer. In it, the date, time, and people were all described in words by Dubai at an astonishing speed of tens of thousands of words per second. In just a few minutes, Dubai summarized thousands of pages of information about Alfred Gerard. At this moment, Krynn devoted himself to sorting out clues about Gerard. Then after a few hours passed. Then I saw Krynn, who was still recording something, suddenly trembled, and a smile appeared on his face. "It's you, Kingpin." Looking at the clue map he made, one after another seemed unrelated, but through various connections, they finally converged on one person. Krynn knew that this was the person he was looking for. Looking at the clue map in front of him at this moment, Krynn finally figured out the context of the whole matter. Gerald contacted Kingpin through his confidants and asked him to deal with him. For some reason, Kingpin didn't want to be controlled by the other party anymore, so he took care of the other party first and started an uprising. He has become an independent underground emperor in a true sense, and no one can give orders above him. Thinking of this, Krynn couldn't help but reveal a playful smile on his face. Although the current Kingpin is far from growing up to the famous New York philanthropist Wilson Fisk, who is deeply loved by New York citizens, there are only traces revealed from now on. Krynn knew that the other party wanted to transform. And Gerard is the only one who is above him and has his leverage, so in order for his own transformation to go smoothly, Kingpin must first cut off the forces that the other party can use. Then silence him. After all, at this point in time, even if something happens to Gerald, everyone will think it is a competitor or Kylian's revenge. But he was able to get out of the situation perfectly, and no one in the world had anything to do with him. He was worthy of being the emperor of the underworld. After thinking clearly about the other party's methods, it had to be said that Krynn had a sense of appreciation for this Kingpin whom he had never met before. Determined enough, cruel enough, and ambitious enough, it's a pity that the other party is now in the limelight and will not allow anyone to be above him. Otherwise, Krynn really wants to accept the other party and manage the company for himself. Dubai, create a special database for Kingpin, then back up the current data, and help this guy delete all these records. After smiling slightly, Krynn stood up and said to Dubai. After the explanation, Krynn lay on the bed. After a busy day, his body just couldn't stand it anymore. The next day, early morning, as the sun lit up the entire land, Kylian's phone also rang. "Boss, there is a Miss Maya Hansen here in the company who wants to see you. I also took out your business card." After the call was connected, the company's front desk reported to Krynn on the other end of the phone. "I understand, you take her to the living room and wait, I'll be there soon." Krynn, who was swimming at this time, couldn't help but feel happy when he heard on the other end of the phone that Maya Hansen came to the door. You must know that, as he said before, Maya Hansen is also the leader in the biological cell world. A capable person, his ability is even stronger than that of Samuel, who was just recruited to some extent, so after a brief talk, Krynn hung up the phone and drove towards the company impatiently. The speed was so fast that the detector on the police car parked on the roadside to check the speed issued a warning. When he saw the police car chasing behind him, Krynn just smiled slightly, then took out his mobile phone and made a call leisurely. After a while, the police car, which was still blaring its siren aggressively, silently turned off the lights, and with a decisive drift, drove straight back towards the original road. After seeing this scene, Krynn just smiled silently and could only say that this was the world exclusively for capitalists that he hated most in his previous life. Helpless but realistic, On the other side, Maya Hansen, who had packed up everything she had, also came to Kylian's company with all the information and the successful experimental plant. Although she doesn't know whether Pioneer technology, which has now become famous all over the world, will still want her. But all she knew was that this was her last chance. An invasive creature can be turned into a bomb at any time. Almost no investor has thought clearly about the purpose of this thing after seeing it. Even Maya Hansen herself can't say for sure. After all, this project has been going on for nearly 10 years now, and apart from the successful experiment on the only plant, she has no results. All she knew was that if this research could continue, it would definitely have great prospects. However, it was a pity that the cost during the experiment was too high. Without investors, she would not be able to continue the research and development. In this way, with an uneasy mood, Maya Hansen kept waiting in the living room. Until the door of the living room opened, and the nerdy-looking Killian whom she had met before in Switzerland seemed to be a different person at this moment. He walked in tall, strong and confident, and then faced her with a smile on his face. "Greet. Miss Maya Hansen, it's great to see us again." After finishing speaking, Killian stretched out his hand politely. As the company expands, he can now be said to be more hungry for talents than Boss Sao. "Hello, Mr. Killian, I really didn't expect that you would come to see me in person now." After seeing Killian appear in front of her, Maya Hansen was surprised. She could understand that the other party had no project before and came to her, but now with the successful future technology of Baymax, he can still be like, now come see her in person like this. Her original idea was to come under the name Killian, and if she was lucky, she would be recruited into a small team. With the company's funds, she would start researching her own project. "Ha ha ha, we haven't seen each other for a few days, not for a few years, and I'm just lucky enough to get a good project, and it hasn't reached the point of being unattainable. Miss Maya Hansen, what do you want?" Quote. After hearing Maya Hansen's words, Killian laughed and said, "Mr. Killian, you don't know that after the advent of Baymax, your pioneering technology has been a place that many scientific researchers yearn for. Many of my friends are talking about your company." Looking at the man in front of him who was completely different from before, and now even made him feel unattainable, Maya Hansen spoke despite being nervous. "Haha, really, for me, it's a happy thing. But Miss Maya Hansen, to be honest, compared to those people, for me, your arrival is actually what makes me happier." In response to Maya Hansen's words, Killian just smiled and briefly replied, then looked straight at Maya Hansen in front of him and said, "A good scientific researcher would be as helpful to him as Jarvis was to Iron Man." Quote? Quote. After hearing Killian's words, especially the last sentence, Maya Hansen was completely confused. "As you know, what I said before about my concern for your scientific research is definitely not empty words. You discovered a gap in the deep structure of the human brain in biological cells in 1991, and discovered a special substance. Then you applied for a research project in school, which is the ultimate transformation. From the very beginning, from theoretical research to proving your inferences from plant experiments. Then the idea is to use it on the human nerve center, invade and perfect its structure through chemical means, and activate the human body's potential at a deep level. Thereby, it is possible to prevent diseases and even regenerate lost limbs. I should be right, right?" Looking at Maya Hansen in front of him, Killian smiled slightly, and then expressed his concern for her bit by bit. After listening to Killian's words, Maya Hansen realized at this moment that the other party's attention to her was really more than just words. Although it is only 1 or 2 sentences, it can definitely be summarized after reading all her research reports and experiences from the beginning to the present. At this moment, she really regretted why she didn't choose Killian earlier. Quote. "Yes, but this. I really didn't expect that you would." Looking at Killian in front of her at this moment, Maya Hansen only felt that her language logic system had been disrupted. "I didn't expect that I would pay so much attention to you. To be honest, from the very beginning to now, I, Pioneer Technology, have been committed to developing and investing in various highly influential scientific research projects to benefit mankind and give back to society. And you and your ultimate renovation project are on our watch list all the time." Seeing the surprised and overwhelmed look of Maya Hansen in front of her, Killian just smiled and then spoke to her seriously. "I'm sorry, I even thought you were." Regarding Killian's words, after coming back to her senses, Maya Hansen hesitated. "You think I'm a liar? The kind who defrauds money or beauty? Believe me, this is all in the past. The most important thing is now, isn't it? You need investment, and I'm extremely optimistic about you and your project, and that's enough." At this moment, Killian spoke. "Then, I don't know how we can cooperate." Then, after hesitating for a long time, Maya Hansen finally spoke. After all, these are the real purposes of her trip. "Good question. I admire you. I have several options here. First, I am responsible for the investment in project revenue sharing. When the project matures, my company will account for 90% of the benefits generated by this project and you will account for 10%. During this period, it will be based on development investment and research progress. Waiting for various factors, I will use 10 to 20% of the project revenue as incentives, which is the net profit. And this project will be led by you throughout the entire process. Regarding your research and development projects, the company will not have any human interference, and will fully guarantee the project financial support you need. Second, project share allocation. If you join my company, I will give you 1% of the shares, and you will be responsible for the company's biological research projects, including but not limited to your current ultimate renovation project. When your current project is successful, I will also give you an additional 1% minus 3% share incentive. Third, my company will be responsible for buying out your current scientific research project for $1 billion. From now on, this project will have nothing to do with you. At the same time, you can also choose whether to join my company. I can promise to give you the status of minimum research team leader, so that you can independently lead a scientific research team to take charge of company projects. Even if you are confident, you can form a team on your own. After hearing what Maya Hansen said, Killian took the initiative to tell him the plan he had thought about on the way here. Any one of Killian's plans is extremely tempting to Maya Hansen now. And if Kennedy saw the second option at this time, he would even be tempted to jump. You know, he spent $50 billion to buy 5% of the shares, and this woman, with just one technology, can get $10 billion of shares first, and even up to $30 billion in shares later. But it was impossible for Kennedy to see these. For Killian, talents must be given adequate treatment and respect. There is endless money to be made, and the most important thing is to attract talents by bundling interests. As long as Maya Hansen is on his chariot, Killian will be confident that he can create trillions of profits for himself by relying on his talent. What he lacked was never money. It seems that you have a lot of confidence in me. 3 of the 3 choices are to join your company. After listening to Killian's conditions, Maya Hansen couldn't help but find the common ground among these conditions and then spoke. Of course, when it comes to talents, my consistent aim is never to miss them. Smiling slightly, she answered Maya Hansen's question confidently and gently. After hearing Killian's answer, Maya Hansen couldn't help but fell silent. To be honest, no matter which choice Killian made, it far exceeded her expectations for this trip. The third option is $1 billion. Even if she stops doing scientific research projects in the future, this money will be enough for her to spend her whole life. If she uses it properly, she can even rely on this money to rise. As for the first one, she was in charge of the project, with a steady stream of funds invested, and she was the main person in charge. If the project was successful, she would even get 30% of the profits. It can be said that no researcher can stand in the way of this. Taking charge of his or her own project, with both sharing and rewards, is simply a paradise-like choice. The second one was the same, but the conditions were so good that she couldn't believe they were even good. Today, the share price of pioneered technology is rising in the market every day, and there are even rumors that many pharmaceutical companies and large consortiums want to acquire and invest in it at sky-high prices. As long as she chooses this one, she is equivalent to directly changing from a migrant worker to a manager. I choose the first one. Then, after thinking for a while, Maya Hansen, who finally made up her mind, raised her head and looked at Killian in front of her and said. She knew clearly what she wanted now. The second one was too much, so much that she didn't think she deserved it. If she chose, it would be at least several $1 billion. And she also firmly believes that as long as the other party values talents as much as he said, then she can get back all her current choices with her own efforts. Of course, the most important thing is that she is more willing to believe in her ultimate transformation. As long as she invests enough money, she will definitely earn sky-high profits. Thinking of this, Maya Hansen became more determined in her choice. You sure? Looking at Maya Hansen, who made an unexpected choice in front of her, Killian's eyes were full of surprise and surprise. You must know that any smart person will know what choice to make before making this choice. Killian is not surprised even if he chooses the third option. After all, it is cash money that can be obtained directly. And the first one. After thinking about it, Killian couldn't help but laugh. It seemed that the other party really had enough confidence in his research. After all, if the other party believes in me, it will be 30% of the profit share. Sure, boss, so now do you need me to introduce to you the progress of my research? After nodding vigorously, Maya Hansen took the initiative to speak to Killian in front of her. She was afraid that if she continued talking, she would really be crushed by Killian's choice. Certainly, after gesturing to the other party to show, Killian leaned back on the chair easily and looked at Maya Hansen and her plants in front of him with a leisurely expression. This is the successful product of my current experiment. Although it still has some instability, I have changed the algorithm of telomerase, and within a month, it will become a mature, ultimate transformation marker. The next step is to start biological experiments. After hearing what Killian said, Maya Hansen took out a document from the backpack behind her and handed it to Killian while explaining. So since you also said that it is one step away from maturity, can you briefly introduce to me its current abilities? After briefly looking at the document handed over by Maya Hansen, Killian turned his attention to the other party's plant, and then asked curiously. Everyone, please be careful. These are high-precision instruments. No one can afford to pay for them if they are damaged. Handle it with care. Looking at these high-tech instruments in front of him, the contractor at this moment was supervising everyone while shouting loudly with 120 thoughts in mind. See. After all, no matter which one of these things he sells, he may not be able to afford the compensation. Under the instructions of the contractor, there were no problems during the entire process. In just a few hours, all the instruments on more than a dozen vehicles were cleared. At this time, Samuel also began to instruct the workers to move down to the second floor of the underground laboratory one after another under the supervision of security guards. Because of Killian's instructions, they cleared out all the laboratories on the second underground floor in advance to place these instruments. To be honest, Samuel was also full of doubts about this. He took a general look at it on the way and couldn't figure out what it was. It can only be said that this is a big guy, and there are more than 10 identical big guys. But even though he was curious, Samuel still didn't care about it without the boss's instructions. Just be careful not to knock these devices during the whole process. After they finished their work, Killian's car arrived at the entrance of the laboratory before nightfall. Boss. As soon as Killian got off the car, Samuel Stern, who was at the entrance of the laboratory, quickly ran over. How is the scene going? Is everything arranged as I said? Killian asked as he walked towards the laboratory. Don't worry, boss, everything is ready. But judging from the appearance of the machine, you can't be. At first, Samuel didn't know what the large machine was, but after it was unpacked and assembled by on-site personnel, he would be a fool if he couldn't understand it anymore. Nutritional tubes, incubators, ventilators, and vital sign monitors. After combining these one by one, don't you want to cultivate replicants? After hearing what the other party said, Killian also looked at Samuel carefully and saw that Samuel's energy was indeed much better than when they met yesterday. His eyes, which were originally bloodshot, because I had enough rest, I returned to my previous state of clarity. That's right, that's the clone training cabin. Every piece of equipment is customized by me. After hearing that Samuel had probably guessed what it was, Killian didn't hide it, but said it openly. To be honest, things like human cloning are no longer new. Countries and companies around the world, large and small, are conducting numerous experiments openly and secretly. As for similar culture chambers, as long as you have connections, there are many specialized suppliers that provide complete sets of equipment. It's just that what Killian needs is more professional, so he can only find a company to customize it himself, and there is no way to purchase ready-made ones. Otherwise, Killian would have seen the emergence of cloning devices even faster. But, boss, with all due respect, the investment and cost of cloning people is too high. And it will take at least more than 10 years for a clone to mature. That's right, clones are not what everyone imagines. As long as they are cloned, the size and age of the original owner can be cloned intact. No matter where the clone is, it takes time. After all, it takes more than 10 years to transform from a cell embryo into a mature human being, which is the time it takes for a person to normally develop from childhood to youth. This is not built for me, but in the future, trust me, your experiments will come in handy. Of course, Killian couldn't say anything about what he had done systematically, so he just explained it. After all, if the T-virus is to be developed, human experiments are indispensable, and hundreds of thousands of experimental subjects are needed. Naturally, Killian cannot kidnap and buy people for experiments like other companies. Not only was that against the law, it would also have an impact on his company's future image. So replicants are the best choice. As for human rights and the like, when the T-virus matures, he believes that Congressman Kennedy and the U.S. government will be willing to help him establish relevant bills. Just like that, after talking, the two came to the laboratory on the second underground floor. After entering the laboratory, there was no one else except Killian and Samuel on the second underground floor. Now, because of the need to cultivate the Black Watch team, it is impossible for people to stay in this layer of Killian. Even this layer of Killian will be closed for a long time in the future, and he can only enter and exit it. Okay, you go ahead and do your work. I'll go in and take a look myself. After arriving at the door, Killian sent Samuel away. Regarding the system, when he became completely powerful, he didn't want anyone to know. After hearing what Killian said, Samuel also returned to his research room very wisely. To be honest, if Killian hadn't called him, he wouldn't have been willing to take care of these things, so it would be just right to let him go now. After Samuel left, Killian reset the security code of the laboratory door on this floor. After the elevator on each floor is opened, there is an isolation door dozens of centimeters thick at the door. Only after it is opened can one enter, and this floor is no exception. After setting the password, Killian walked inside. There are 12 training cabins inside. After arriving at the main control panel in the center, Killian quietly brought up the system. System, redeem the Black Watch team. Single quote. Reputation points have been deducted. 5,000, remaining, 1472 points. Single quote. After finishing speaking silently, Killian saw that half of the 12 culture chambers in front of him suddenly lit up, and in the center, embryos began to appear one after another. After a while, accompanied by the constant transmission of a certain substance, it began to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye, and in just 2 minutes, one after another naked adult men appeared in front of Killian. Everyone is in the cultivation cabin, quietly closing their eyes. Before Killian could be surprised, he saw the breeding cabin making a beeping sound. Immediately, culture fluid began to pour out from the bottom, and then everyone began to open their eyes. Then a complete set of equipment appeared in front of everyone, and everyone put on the equipment in front of them. Black suit. In less than half a minute, he completed his awakening and put on his equipment. Report, Commander, the Watcher team should have 7 people, but actually there are 7 people. Report to you now. At this time, one of the team captains, after seeing Killian not far away, came to Killian wearing equipment, saluted a military salute and then reported. After hearing what the other party said, Killian finally reacted. It was so amazing that in less than a few minutes, a living combat team appeared in front of him from scratch. At this moment, he no longer wanted to worry about why the clones grew so fast. Looking at the familiar standard triangular glasses in front of him, coupled with the black and gray combat suit, equipped with all the weapons from light machine guns to heavy firepower, at this moment, Killian is finally reassured about his future safety. A lot. It has to be said that as a veteran killing fan in his previous life, he once controlled the protagonist to be hunted down by the team in front of him. Even reopened numerous times, but now that he has such a force, there is nothing to worry about. Do you have a name? Looking at the team leader in front of him, Killian asked immediately. Report to Commander, no. After hearing Killian's question, the team leader still answered in that Gujing Wubo voice. From today on, your name is Adam. And the team you led is called Eden. You and your mission is to fight for me, defend me to the death with everything you have, and hunt down all enemies that hinder our progress, do you understand? Looking at the man in front of him, Killian immediately spoke. When we hunt, we kill. No one is safe and nothing is sacred. We are Black Watch, we are the last line of defense. We will burn ourselves to protect the commander's life. This is also the last line of defense that we defend to the death. After hearing Killian's words, all the Black Watch team members present also trembled, and then said in unison. For them, their existence is to strive to complete the mission of the Creator, and there is nothing else that can affect them. Very good, there is a test over there, show me your skills. After listening to what the team members said, Killian then said to everyone, "As you command, Your Majesty, Commander." After hearing Killian's words, everyone stood at attention and saluted Killian, and then ran to the training area nearby. At this moment, to be honest, at that moment, Killian was extremely shocked as he listened to the members of the team swearing to him in unison. He really did not expect that the guards created by the system would be so loyal. High. It's no wonder that the price given by the system is so high. It can be said that even if Killian asks them to commit suicide on the spot, they will not hesitate at all. In the next few hours, Killian served as a recorder and watched everyone's test training data. Shooting training, top-notch. Fighting training, top quality. Cooperating with assault training, top-notch. Single arm strength 200 kg, peak running speed 20 ms, maximum reaction speed 0.1 s, pain tolerance level, unmeasured. Looking at the training report in his hand, Killian was extremely shocked by every item. Even the front was fine, especially when it came to the last pain-bearing training, which was the torture training or prisoner experience training that basically every top force had to endure. As the name suggests, it allows you to experience what the enemy will do to you if captured. However, even so, many troops cannot achieve 100% restoration. After all, it may be difficult for you to make a person live comfortably, but to make him live worse than death, there are too many methods that can be found throughout human history. And that's it. When Killian saw them testing themselves, he couldn't bear it. It was too cruel, and he even stopped the training midway. Because there was no need. If he hadn't been able to see the cold sweat on the foreheads of the victims, Killian would have even felt that the system cut off their pain nerves when they were created. But even if the fingers were linked to the heart, and even more cruel criminal laws were imposed, the victims were not deceived at all, which made Killian couldn't help but be shocked. With such a force here, what else does he have to fear? Report to Commander, the Eden team has regrouped. Please give the next step of instructions. At this time, the team members also completed the assembly again, and the leader took the initiative to stand up and say, "From now on, you are responsible for guarding my safety at all times." After making up for the shortcomings of the guards, Killian's company once again returned to its normal state. Maya Hansen, under the new team arranged by Killian, led them to work day and night on the Ultimate Transformation Project, with the intention of conducting it into human experiments as soon as possible so that Killian would not regret his previous choice. Samuel Stern's Sun Staircase Flower project is also progressing at an extremely fast pace. Now, because of Killian's emphasis on the Sun Staircase Flower project, Samuel already has 3 scientific research teams, all of which he is mainly responsible for. During this period, with Killian's intentional and unintentional reminders, as well as his own genius thinking, he has mastered a large degree of theoretical knowledge and research data, and has even begun to arrange a team to start biological experiments. Except for Killian's own 2 Black Watch team members, the other 5 members were all fully armed and guarding the laboratory. This is to ensure that the on-site situation is controlled as soon as possible in the event of an unexpected incident. As for whether Black Watch can control the epidemic, Killian has no worries. On Lisa's side, with the establishment of the sales department, Dubai's sales have also begun to increase day by day, and it has reached strategic cooperation with many companies and countries. Dubai with professional needs and image can be customized for them, and these only require a little extra price. With the continuous efforts of the sales department led by Lisa, today's pioneered technology can be said to be measured by how much money it makes every day, and every day is the same price. For this reason, during this period, the old man Kennedy also specifically approached Killian to let him develop the company with peace of mind. He would take care of things outside the company. However, the government was pressing hard and urgently needed to invest in shares. After all, he and the country's enterprises still had a lot of differences. Big difference. Killian also showed full understanding and made another transaction with him, selling 3% of the shares at the original price as the ticket to completely open up the government. At this point, in private, pioneer technology has become the hottest apple in the hands of every executive and powerful person in the United States. Besides this matter, Killian himself is also busy. As Dubai's sales increased, the company's employees began to increase dramatically. The entire company is like running the largest assembly line, with new products constantly coming in, assembled and then sold. Killian is constantly recruiting cutting-edge research teams and talented researchers at exorbitant prices and benefits. As long as talents come to him, he is not afraid to pay. Money is just paper, talent is the most important. Even within the industry, because of Killian's actions, the salaries of scientific researchers in the entire high-tech industry have collectively doubled. Moreover, those industries also formed a group to issue a statement condemning Killian for destroying the market, condemning him for not paying employees too high wages to prevent them from becoming inert and detrimental to the development of the entire industry. However, these were all ignored by Killian. Before he even opened his mouth, one by one of these companies, the guild came to talk to them. You must know that here in the United States, the workers' unions actually receive wages from the workers and have serious jobs. If your company makes a mistake and exploits workers, or if your union tries to sell things, you will be taken to court. If you don't pay 180 million yuan in compensation, you won't be able to get through with it. As for these, Killian just glanced at them and didn't care. Just kidding, I spend money to recruit employees. I am happy to spend money. If you have a temper, you can also give high benefits. On the other side, Killian's Pioneer Technology Industrial Park, under Killian's money-spending offensive, the entire project was started at full capacity. What could have been handled by a single engineering team was unexpectedly assigned to 5 shifts by Killian. If it weren't for the fact that so many people couldn't be accommodated on site, Killian would have wanted to bring all the workers from all over the United States. At this pace, the Pioneer Technology Industrial Park can be said to be undergoing a major change every 5 days. If this progress continues, Killian even predicts that he will be able to harvest a high-quality industrial park in a short time. At the same time, the laboratory on the Miami island was also being expanded, and countless machines drove in through the passages built at the entrance of the laboratory every day. The bottom of the laboratory began to be expanded downwards. Killian's plan for this island laboratory is to at least become a large underground laboratory like a honeycomb. Not only does it have complete artificial intelligence supervision, but it also has a complete security system and mature underground production and supply integrated equipment. In short, what Killian wants is an underground research city. And every base in the future will do this. Because the technology he unlocked in the system is destined to have too many secrets that cannot be made public, so as long as there is a problem in the underground base, the tens of meters thick super alloy door will fall directly and be closed tightly. A necessary emergency self-destruct device for underground laboratories. This set of procedures can ensure that his secret is foolproof. And it doesn't stop there. As time goes by, Killian has acquired another small and medium-sized experimental company. As the company's security force in the future, he needed a clone assembly line factory that could produce Black Watch troops, so after an inspection, a remote experimental company in Miami came into Killian's eyes. To this end, he sent Lisa to sign the contract and purchased it for 80 million United States dollars. What awaits Killian now is the arms license that Lisa is preparing, and the reputation points that can unlock the Black Watch force. 3 months later, on an isolated island far away from the city. It is located hundreds of meters underground, on the 34th floor underground, where the newly built laboratory is located. At this moment, behind a super alloy door tens of centimeters thick, a group of researchers are working with Samuel Stern, the leader, looked attentively at a black gorilla in an isolation room not far away, his eyes tightly closed and his whole body twitching. Next to it was an empty medicine bottle. If there was an instrument at this time that could see the cellular world inside the gorilla's body, you will find that a scarlet-shaped and aggressive foreign cell is constantly eroding the cells in his body, and then engulfs and replicates them continuously. In the end, he uses his own body to destroy the original cells. Completely replace the original cell positions in the body. Then it operates. Until later, the replaced cell began to divide into 2 identical cells, and the DNA of the newly divided cell was also modified by the T-virus. It's like everything is back to how it was before. Except for the change in the appearance of the cells, nothing else has changed. However, with the continuous phagocytosis and replication of T-virus cells in the body, completely different changes began to occur in the gorilla's body. At this moment, it was as if he knew the host was in crisis. A large number of immune cells begin to attack the newly invaded cells, intending to kill these foreign invaders. You must know that immune cells are the common name for white blood cells. Although they can be divided into many types, various immune cells play important roles in the human body. But the most powerful effect is to destroy all external enemies and prevent internal chaos in the body. It can even kill cancer cells, which shows its power. It's just that even such powerful cells were defeated steadily when faced with the incoming T virus. Many immune cells among them even began to be reversely devoured by the T virus and then replicated, becoming new specialized cells. Immune cells belonging to the T virus, and this newly born immune cell has a more powerful ability than before, and can easily engulf all viruses and original immune cells it sees for its own use. Even after swallowing the virus originally injected into the body by the researchers, not only the phagocytes modified by the T virus could easily kill and devour it, but even after swallowing it, the own cells became stronger. After that, as time slowly passed, all the cells modified by the T virus launched a comprehensive attack on the entire body at this moment. At this moment, in the outside world, everyone saw that as time passed, the chimpanzee, which was still shaking, suddenly stopped. Then I saw that his eyes were completely opened, and he looked around with a confused expression through those black eyes. Success. At this time, after seeing the chimpanzee open its eyes safely, the researchers at the scene couldn't help but said excitedly. But they just said it excitedly, because they all knew that further tests would be needed. Boss. Not far away, after watching the chimpanzee wake up, Samuel asked Krynn for instructions. After seeing the other party nodding, he waved directly. Then, only 2 Black Watch members wearing high-strength chemical protective suits walked in, and then used the lasso tools that had been prepared to secure them tightly despite their fierce struggles. Its power has also become stronger in all aspects. Looking at the performance of the gorilla in the isolation room, Krynn suddenly spoke. Yes, even a security guard could easily subdue it before. Unexpectedly, 2 people are now trying to break free. And the most important thing is that he still maintains his normal sanity. After hearing Kylian's words, Samuel on the side nodded and said in agreement. And the most important thing that Samuel didn't say was that the strength of these security personnel specially recruited by the boss was far greater than the soldiers he had seen before. Then in the laboratory, after the gorilla was fixed, another team of researchers soon walked in and began to draw blood, perform tests, and observe hair and other vital signs. Strict virus isolation procedures were followed throughout the process. No one dared to be negligent, because just before this, a research team started a biological experiment without authorization, and started the experiment without the presence of security personnel. As you can imagine, the creatures in the research room went crazy on the spot, and none of the researchers inside survived. Because of this incident, the person in charge, Samuel, was demoted and punished by the company for poor supervision. It is precisely because of this incident that in subsequent research, all teams paid special attention to isolation protection and safety work. Because they all understand one thing, that is, if they don't do it, if something happens, people will really die. A few hours later, in the laboratory, Krynn watched Samuel rush in with a joyful expression on his face, and understood that the other party's experiment was probably really successful. Boss, according to the experimental data collected, research on the T-type virus, one of the many viruses extracted from the sun staircase, has perfectly strengthened the body of the experimental subject. And the telomerase in its cells has been extended to a great extent compared to before the experiment, and its division and consumption speed are also optimized dozens of times than before. This means that it does extend the lifespan of the host. Moreover, the physical quality of the experimental subjects has been significantly improved compared to before, including neurological responses, physical strength, wound healing, etc. The current results show that if an ordinary person is injected with T-virus for enhancement, he can directly become a professionally trained soldier, or even taller than him. It can be said that the T-virus has completely optimized the DNA in the organism. And the most important thing is that all the viruses we injected into orangutans were eliminated by the T-virus. This means that with it, many diseases in the world will never occur in humans again. These include SARS, bird flu, and the incurable diseases that people talk about such as Ebola, AIDS, tumors and even cancer. At this time, after getting the first-hand experimental data, Samuel reported to Killian with excitement. You know, gorillas are the closest experimental subjects to humans, and experiments have been successful on them. This means that the T-virus will have the same effect when injected into humans. And when he said it to the end, Samuel's whole face flushed with excitement. You know, in order to fully test the ability of the T-virus before, they collected almost all the known viruses that could be collected, and then injected them into them before the experiment. After the experiment, these viruses were all undetectable in the bodies of the experimental subjects, which shows its terrifying healing ability. Even as the main person in charge of the Sun Staircase, Samuel knew that this was just a subsidiary project research of the Sun Staircase. Not to mention that the T-virus includes 3 major departments: medical treatment, human enhancement, and biological weapons. The reason why the T-virus can be promoted to biological experiments so quickly is because the 2 major departments are responsible for each other's data research in their respective directions and then summarize it in together. With the continuous development of the solar staircase, within 3 months, the research team discovered several alphabet research directions for it. It's just that the T-virus here has been making rapid progress recently, and it is the main project requested by the boss, so he came to take charge of it. Otherwise, there are other biological research projects, and he would not be able to get involved at all. But even so, the more in-depth he studied, the more the Sun Staircase shocked Samuel to the point of panic. This doesn't look like something that belongs in the human world at all. Very good. Let's start human experiments immediately and conduct more experimental comparisons. I want to ensure that it can be put on the market without any problems. In addition, once the experiment is successful, we will start classifying its efficacy into 3 levels, 1, 2, 3, with the efficacy decreasing in sequence. The T-virus in our current laboratory is designated as T0 level. It is mainly sold internally and can only be enjoyed by company executives. Understand? After listening to Samuel's words, Killian spoke to the other party at this moment. The release of the full version of the T-virus was a huge shock. If we say that Demax is equivalent to destroying the equipment jobs of medical companies around the world, then the T-virus will destroy the jobs of all medical companies. At that time, Killian could imagine that if the full version of the T-virus was released, he would become the world's enemy, and pharmaceutical companies would crowdfund hundreds of billions of dollars in bounties to kill him. Although he is not afraid, there is really no need to offend everyone. You must know that this world is still extremely dangerous overtly and covertly. There is no guarantee that there will be some bounty hunter with superpowers such as Deadpool. If he comes to kill him for this huge sum of money, then he must die unjustly. So before he had the ability to crush the world, Killian still set a low-key theme for himself. After settling the matters in the laboratory, Killian immediately came to the 35th floor. A high-intensity laboratory put into use together with the 34th floor. The laboratories starting from the 30th floor are larger and more complex than the previous laboratories. Not only do they have high-strength isolation walls, but the inner sea of each laboratory is equipped with emergency destruction devices such as toxic gas, high temperature, and liquid nitrogen. Because starting from here, below the 30th floor, Killian positioned it as a research site for the development of biological weapons. Every laboratory is a high-risk experimental area, every floor is highly protected, and there are 20 laboratories on each floor. It can be said that anyone who wants to enter this floor must be a senior company executive, and this will also be used for high-risk experiments, such as T-virus biological weapons and the development of Tyrants. The laboratories on each floor here are the highest protection laboratories built strictly in accordance with the United States, Level 4 biosafety level. The isolation walls in the laboratory even reach dozens of layers. Each layer is made of 5 meters thick super strength made of alloy. Finally, there is the 35th floor currently located at the bottom. The laboratory on this floor has only 5 rooms, scattered in the 5 corners in a pentagonal shape. The reason why this floor is reduced so much compared to other floors is because the research and development projects here are the most dangerous and risky experiments. On this floor, Killian is protected in accordance with the most stringent protection construction standards set by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, which is 10 times stricter. The isolation walls of each laboratory are 10 meters thick, 3 meters of which are entirely poured in concrete, and the rest are made of solid special steel materials that are bonded to each other. Each laboratory is independent of each other and does not interfere with each other. It has its own oxygen generation and indoor circulation ventilation. It will never be connected to the outside world. Each laboratory is self-sufficient. Even if viral weapons such as tyrants and lickers go wild during the experiment, there is no need to worry about them escaping. It can be said that those working below the 30th floor are all truly their own scientific research teams. Basically all of the people here are old people who have followed Killian since the beginning, and Killian has absolute confidence in them. After 10 minutes of verification, there was a ding sound. After the electronic screen in front of Killian turned green. Then the door on this floor began to slowly open from the middle to both sides with a huge mechanical roar. After it was fully opened, Killian walked in. After first disinfecting, and then passing the black watch soldier in front of the isolation door to hand him a protective suit and put it on, Killian came to the laboratory in Area A. Boss. As Killian entered the laboratory, after seeing Killian and his exclusive bodyguard coming in at the door, Roman Burr, who was in front of the experimental console, quickly walked over and spoke to Killian, said, "Well, how's it going now?" As he walked towards the inside, Killian said while looking at the figure lying in the center filled with green culture fluid. As Killian approached, the figure inside suddenly appeared. Countless infusion tubes, as if transporting some kind of liquid, were continuously flowing towards the burly figure inside, who was more than 3 meters tall. But his expression was extremely ferocious, as if the body of a huge orangutan was crawling with centipedes. It is qualified as a deterrent weapon. But as a biological weapon, there is still a long way to go. This kind of orangutan has great intellectual defects. Even if it is close to humans, its IQ is still very different. And under the violent invasion of the modified virus, even if we have been treating it for a long time before after training, its IQ is basically equal to 0. No orders will be taken. It will only destroy everything in sight. It's too uncontrollable. After hearing Killian's words, Roman Burr followed and spoke to report. "Boss, see if you can find a way to get something real." After hesitating for a long time, Roman Burr couldn't help but want to speak. But in the end it was not finished. Human experiments are not allowed for the time being. We are a serious technology company. We cannot do things that violate public order, good customs, legal ethics, and we cannot touch them. Do you understand? Killian naturally knew what Roman Burr had not finished, but he still spoke to him firmly. "Just kidding, if we start conducting human experiments now, wouldn't that give us a clue to the US government?" Although Killian knew that the other party would not take action against him, there were too many things that could be manipulated. At least he won't take the initiative to conduct human experiments on his own. But, no buts. I'm going to ask you something right now. Can you ensure that T000 can be started and shut down stably and without error? After interrupting the other party's conversation, Killian continued. "Yes, we have installed 100 units of a special and powerful anesthetic in its body. Even a sperm whale can be instantly numbed." After hearing Killian's words, Roman Burr immediately said with certainty, "After all, no matter what the results of biological weapons are, effective control measures are extremely necessary. After all, you never know when the weapon will turn against you." "Very good, you should do the preparations here and then pack them so that they are in place at all times." After receiving a positive reply from Roman Burr, Killian couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth, and then said, "You must know that in order to make this tyrant more powerful in combat and not affect his future plans, he indicated that a certain amount of the extremis virus should be added to his body. Super speed regeneration plus super power up. The two are a perfect match. As for whether too much energy will cause an explosion, haha, the T-virus will devour you regardless of whether your energy is strong or not. Congressman Kennedy, I wonder if you could help me introduce General Thaddeus E. Ross of the military." Killian, who had returned to the company office at this moment, was speaking into the phone. "What, your new arms company has a new product coming out?" After hearing that Killian asked him to introduce him to General Ross from the military, Kennedy on the other end of the phone couldn't help but smile with interest and then asked. After all, during this time, as Pioneer technology has grown stronger, and the 3% equity that Killian promised him to operate in the government, he made a lot of money instantly. Even the power and prestige in the government have risen to another level. Killian's application for an arms company was also handled by him personally. But now, within 2 months of the establishment of the arms company, he was asked to make an appointment with the famous iron-blooded general of the military. It seemed that this partner had full confidence in his products. Chapter 41. Ha 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 ha, this is natural, otherwise how could I dare to disturb my closest partner? This also requires Congressman Kennedy to help me match up and arrange a place to test the product. Please help me convey that Pioneer Technologies' military weapons will never let him down. When the time comes, I invite Senator Kennedy to watch it too. Killian on the other end of the phone spoke leisurely into the phone while playing with the documents in his hand. Oh, and me. After hearing that Killian actually invited him, Kennedy on the other end of the phone asked in great surprise. He only thought that he was just acting as a middleman to connect people, but he didn't expect that he would be asked to go too. Ha ha ha, of course, Congressman Kennedy, you are our second largest shareholder of Pioneer Technology, so we must test the company's products together. Killian said with a smile. Okay, then I'm looking forward to watching your performance. Oh, by the way, you may have a little trouble recently, but don't pay too much attention to it, it's just a little trouble. After Kennedy said his last words, he hung up the phone. Killian was left with a confused look on his face. He didn't know what the other person's last sentence meant. But a second later, Killian knew what that sentence meant. Boss, we have received a summons from the Washington court. You have been ordered to attend the Senate Federal Food and Drug Administration Committee and are required to arrive at the court at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to participate in the jury questioning session. A beautiful blonde secretary knocked on the door and came in. She handed a court summons to Killian and said softly, "How long does it take to fly from Miami to Washington?" "Boss, it will take 4 hours. Help me book 4 nights air tickets." Okay. After the explanation, the secretary twisted his body and walked outside, and then gently closed the office door. At this time, Killian looked at the summons in his hand and couldn't help but burst into laughter. He finally understood why Kennedy said it was just a minor inconvenience. Even if you sue him in the House of Representatives, it will be better than the Senate. You know, as early as a few months ago, half of the House of Representatives was on his side, not to mention his continuous bribery and Kennedy's operation in the past few months. Killian dare not guarantee 100%, but the support rate of 80% to 90% is stable. It can be said that the entire Senate is his territory. In Iron Man 2, why did Tony dare to ignore the jury and mess around in court? Even talking and laughing with Pepper. It's because apart from the military commission's verdict, he has the support of the entire military, as well as the support of many senators who bought Stark stock. It is also because of this that he has full confidence that he will not be knocked down by those clowns. And now, Killian can say that he is more stable than Tony Stark. That night, I was on a flight from Miami to Washington. In first class. In order to take care of passengers who need to rest, the lights in the cabin are uniformly dimmed to ensure that guests can rest. Flight attendant, please bring me a glass of lemonade with ice cubes, thank you. Looking at the flight attendant passing by him, Killian spoke softly. Okay, just a second. After replying in a very polite voice, the flight attendant immediately went to prepare. Please use it slowly, sir. After a while, the stewardess handed me a glass of lemonade with ice. Thanks. After Killian thanked him, the stewardess looked at Killian with curious eyes. You must know that for safety and convenience reasons, the seats in front and behind Killian are occupied by 4 discerning people who can tell at a glance. Protected by bodyguards. So she was naturally curious about Killian's identity. It was just out of curiosity, so he pushed his cart and walked out along the corridor. At this time, Killian was holding the glass that was so cold that it had soaked through the wall of the glass. He was lying lazily on the spacious leather chair and looking at the scenery outside the window. For Killian, everything at this moment seemed to have returned to the previous life. Nothing was different, it was still the same scenery. The bright moonlight illuminated the entire land, and some lights seen from time to time on the ground seemed to be. It's like an embellishment under the night. While thinking about it, Killian picked up the lemonade in his hand and took a deep sip. The sour taste had a hint of sweetness, coupled with the cold taste, immediately made Killian's whole body felt refreshed. No matter what time of the day, Killian just likes to drink cold drinks, which will keep his mind calm and his body happy at all times. To be honest, this was Killian's second time flying, and his first time flying first class. The last time he was so tired that he slept the whole time and had no experience. This time, I truly experienced the first-class life of a rich man. From the moment he got on the plane to now, the flight attendants have given her meticulous care and greetings along the way, as well as responded anytime and anywhere, all of which made Killian deeply moved. The differentiated services that come with money are really fascinating. It's no wonder that many wealthy people are desperately trying to make more money. Isn't this just to enjoy services that ordinary people can't enjoy at all? In this matter, Killian has to thank the system. Although he can achieve his current achievements through hard work, it is too troublesome and tiring. A person's life is limited. No matter how far the journey is, it will eventually reach its end. It is better to relax when it is time to relax and enjoy the scenery along the way like now. For more than half a year, he was pressed by time and even a little out of breath. He also decided to take a walk and relax himself after this negotiation. But, fortunately, everything is going smoothly so far. Single quote. After thinking about it, Killian lowered the seat completely, then leaned his feet on the cushion and fell asleep quietly. The next day, in front of the Washington courthouse. At this moment, countless reporters from large and small media outlets, after hearing that the medical committee actually issued a subpoena to pioneer technology, swarmed here like sharks that smelled blood. Everyone started to squeeze forward, wanting to take photos as soon as possible. You know, it created the most famous company in the world. In today's modern world where news is developed, it can be said that even a small piece of news can spread throughout the world in a short time, let alone black technology like Dubai that is applicable to everyone. It can be said that everyone, even in some developed countries and some remote villages, has Dubai stationed there. Otherwise, it's because the black technology that can monitor the body in real time is so weird. You only need to take a photo to know the physical condition. Everyone is eager to own such a machine. Driven by public opinion, some countries, even if they are unwilling to purchase Baymax, have to buy it under the general trend. And this is Baymax's influence. And now, the founder who created Dubai has been accused, and all the eyes of the world have been focused here. Not long after, a black Lincoln car slowly parked in front of and behind the cleared aisle. Under everyone's breathless gaze, the protagonist of this conference, Killian, finally got out of the car under the protection of security guards. After seeing the person coming, everyone at the scene fell into a carnival. Some ladies, blocked by a security wall that had been formed along the entire guardrail, desperately tried to put the business card in their hands into Killian's arms. If you want to use this to reach the sky in one step, or even have a night of pleasure. And some men also want Killian's investment and discovery, and they are also excited to let Killian stop for them. There were countless reporters who kept pressing the shutter at Killian with their long guns and cannons. For a moment, Killian only felt that his eyes were filled with light. Mr. Killian, what do you think of today's court summons? Mr. Killian, there are rumors that your company's robots have safety hazards. Do you have anything to clarify? Mr. Killian, call me. Call me. Ignoring these almost crazy reporters, Killian successfully arrived inside the court under the escort of bodyguards. There were already many people waiting for him inside. Even the jury was seated early. There was a seat reserved for him at the innermost position, which was at the front, and Killian sat down without any politeness. Okay, now the summoner, Mr. Killian, has arrived. This judge declares that this court is officially open. After watching Killian sit down, a councilman in a suit and leather suit on the highest stage also knocked on the wooden hammer in front of him, and then said with a serious face. However, Killian found a hint of kindness in the eyes he looked at him. Moreover, there were a total of 5 members on the stage. Except for one who expressed his impartiality in his gaze, all of them, without exception, showed a certain degree of goodwill when Killian looked at them. However, the procedures that need to be followed still need to be followed. First, the plaintiff, the Federal Food and Drug Administration Committee, was clear about medical robots. It began to claim that it was a medical robot without passing relevant medical technology certification and authorization, giving the general public a warning. A fundamental misinformation. He also asked Killian to reveal Dubai's core technology, which is the body scanner, because it is related to major national technologies and has a great impact on the United States, so he was asked to publish these technologies. Anyway, for Killian, it was just a matter of time. At this moment, Killian took out his phone and started scrolling out of boredom. Although today's mobile phones are far from as smart as the future, they already have quite a lot of functions, which are enough for Killian to entertain him. Mr. Killian. Mr. Killian. After an unknown amount of time passed, Killian, who was chasing the novel, Crossing Killian, was brought back to reality by the judge's hammering voice, and then looked at him with a blank look on his face. Looking at each other. Yes, I'm sorry, sir, what the plaintiff just said was a bit too intoxicating for me and made me fall into it. After hearing what the judge said, Killian put down his phone as if nothing had happened, and then said with a smile. Okay, let me ask the question again. The plaintiff accused you of illegally selling medical equipment products without obtaining relevant medical certification. How do you explain this? Regarding Killian's serious nonsense, the judge just smiled and asked. Illegal sales of medical equipment products. This is completely slandered by Kai Guago. Our company has always abided by the law and paid taxes on time. How could we do such illegal things? Regarding the judge's question, Killian said, indignantly. It was as if the whole person had been greatly wronged. Demax is a medical product. At this time, at the plaintiff's table, an old acquaintance of Killian, Alex, stood up on behalf of the Federal Food and Drug Administration Committee and said affirmatively. Medical products. Sorry, neither I nor my company have ever thought of it that way. Then how do you define it? Definition: robot, consultant, or assistant, personal helper. You can define it however you want. Even if Mr. Alex likes this style, our company can also undertake doll services. It's just a matter of asking. But regarding the issue of size, maybe we should find a professional chip company to take charge of it. After all, we always put customers first. Seeing Alex's sharp question in front of him, Killian responded directly. Puff. Ha 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 ha. As soon as Killian finished speaking, the jurors present couldn't help laughing. Even the several members of parliament in the court turned red in the face and wanted to laugh, but they were worried about their status and did not dare to laugh. It's a medical device, it's a medical product. It can scan the human body's health status and vital signs, which means it is a medical product. At this time, Alex, as the person involved, naturally didn't find it so funny, and even felt very ashamed, and then spoke with a gloomy face. No, if you say so, then in the Far East, their doctors can see your physical condition and even your disease with their hands or even their eyes. Or do you want to treat them as medical products? You may have to argue with the federal bill. You are objectifying people and workers. If the court allows you to treat these living people as products, then just pretend I didn't say anything. And from the beginning to the end, our company defines it as a robot advisor, which is only responsible for providing advice. From the beginning to the end, our promotion of it is just a personal health steward. Please note that you are just a butler. Looking at Alex not far away, Killian said seriously. This is a small loophole that Killian exploited when he released Baymax, because if Baymax is released as a medical robot, it will not only require technical review, but also various controls, and there will be no one. It takes 2 years to pass the certification. So Killian just launched it as a robo-advisor. This loophole was directly circumvented, and it was precisely because of this loophole that the pharmaceutical company representatives headed by Alex spotted this loophole and dared to stand up and accuse Killian. Mr. Senator, please allow me to turn to page 46, paragraph 7, clause 2, provided by us. After market research on Dubai, we have serious doubts that Dubai's so-called human health scans are actually X-ray scans with strong and large doses of radioactivity. According to the currently known scientific data, a chest X-ray requires a dose of approximately 1.1 millisieverts, and the amount of radiation received by the upper gastrointestinal tract is 2.55 millisieverts. And a scan similar to the full range of the human body shown by Dubai also has a dose of at least 5 millisieverts. For the general population, the dose received in 1 year is 1 millisievert. According to the existing data survey results, we have reason to highly doubt that the scanning technology possessed by Dubai will cause huge harm to the human body. No less than nuclear radiation. And please note, Senators, this is under controlled circumstances, once a year. But Pioneer Technology did not provide detailed suggestions or avoidance, which means that many people have even undergone multiple or more scans. So I only represent the Federal Food and Drug Administration Committee and pharmaceutical companies in the same industry to ask Pioneer Technology to publish relevant technology patents. After reading the materials he provided, everyone present fell silent. After all, if what Alex said is true, then Baymax's scanning technology does have great hidden dangers, and it would not even be an exaggeration to call it a murder crime. Haha, this is completely a one-sided malicious speculation. Even maliciously smearing competitors. Let me ask you, since you said that Dubai's scan will contain X-ray radiation, have you ever conducted any radioactivity testing or X-ray exposure testing on the relevant data? If you have any proof that Baymax is harmful to X-ray radiation, I will recycle the sold Baymax 10 times on the spot on behalf of the company. If you haven't, then I'm sorry. After this is over, I will sue all of your pharmaceutical companies and the Federal Food and Drug Administration Commission on behalf of Pioneer Technology. I am just a federal citizen who abides by the law, and my Pioneer Technology is also a company that abides by the law and aims to benefit the public. Now because it produces cutting-edge technology, I am being maliciously suppressed by you. I want to see, is this still the case? It's not the United States of America, it's not a country that advocates freedom and democracy. After listening to Alex's words, Killian couldn't help but laugh angrily. This is like saying that you are selling mobile phones and someone tells you that your mobile phone has nuclear radiation comparable to that of a nuclear power plant. It is simply funny. Ji Lian slapped the table and stood up, speaking angrily to the people headed by Alex. Beyond words, even after some people saw Killian's appearance, everyone imagined that an emerging technology company was jointly suppressed by industry giants just because it developed epic-making technology. This is simply the standard face of leading companies that bully and dominate the market in everyone's mind. For a time, as the live broadcast was broadcast, more and more people participated in the discussion of this topic. And without exception, most people are basically on Killian's side. Because in this land, the stories that people have accepted since childhood are that of lone heroes, Captain America, etc., who have been suppressed by their peers and excluded by the environment since childhood, and finally became Captain America. They want to contribute to the country, but are also criticized by some who only know those who make money or dragged out to perform on tour. Haha, maybe you are right, or maybe we are just short-sighted, for which I can apologize. But what I want to say is that our topic today is about things that benefit all mankind. Your smart chips and vital sign scanners, no matter which cutting-edge technology they are epic-making. You are a genius, I have to admit it. But what I think everyone knows is that as long as you release all these technologies, everyone in the world can enjoy the ultimate sense of security. Everyone can detect their physical problems in time before they get sick, and take medicine or exercise in time to change them. You can't do it alone. Let me tell you, it's been a quarter now, and your company's market development rate is not even 1%. How long will it take for all Americans, even all of us, to wait for this day? 10 years, or 20 years, or 100 years until everyone turns into ashes. And Baymax has great potential. Not only can it become a medical health consultant, it can even become a bodyguard to ensure everyone's safety. It can also become a policeman. When facing gangsters, there is no need for any police officers to risk their lives. Venture up there. Becoming a firefighter, when facing a fire, they only need to put dry powder in their bodies to put out the fire directly, without any casualties or losses. And your enterprise cannot achieve this level. It requires the joint efforts of all federal people. Babai belongs to the United States and the world, and should not be in our own hands. Thank you Baymax, thank you federal government. After seeing that forcefulness was of no use, Alex immediately switched to a gentle face, then stood up and spoke to the senator and everyone present. After he finished speaking, some people present began to applaud. Because after listening to Alex's words, they suddenly realized that it really made sense. In Killian's hands, it may not be their turn to enjoy Baymax for decades, but if Baymax's technology is announced, then all other pharmaceutical companies, large and small, will produce Baymax, and it won't even take a year by then. They can all enjoy it. That's right, Mr. Alex. Even one of the 5 senators couldn't help but clapped his hands and said. Killian also looked around and saw that this person was also the one who had not responded to his gaze before. It seems that this is where Alex and the others have their confidence. After all, as long as one senator speaks and the general direction is correct, other senators will not dare to do other actions blatantly in front of so many media. You must know that whether they are members of the House of Representatives or senators here, they all came with a real turnout. If the masses do not support them, let alone their own interests, their positions will be lost. But for Killian, these are just tricks that don't make sense. Now, we will invite the chairman of the Antitrust Subcommittee of the Federal House of Representatives, Selden Caddis, who is mainly responsible for ruling on market antitrust and other related matters. Then, the person who just clapped his hands looked at the list on his desk, and then spoke into the microphone in front of him. After he finished speaking, there was a commotion in the corridor, and then under everyone's gaze and the camera zooming in, an old man with half-white hair walked over. Here is what Chairman Selden Caddis collected about the significant impact of the pioneering technology product Baymax on the social level due to its monopoly. After Selden Caddis walked to the empty chair next to Killian and sat down, the senator above also spoke to everyone. Based on our investigation and the provisions of federal antitrust laws, the findings are as follows. 1. Pioneer Technology has abused its market dominance by selling goods at unfairly high prices, which is Dubai. 2. Selling goods at a price lower than cost without justifiable reasons. 20. The company's Dubai has not registered any corresponding patents. It uses its technological advantages and current market position to exclude and restrict other people's business activities, and has the established fact of monopolizing all medical equipment in the market. Finally, based on the results of the above 20 factual regulations, it can be concluded that Dubai, a pioneering technology, has an extremely terrifying monopoly effect, which is extremely harmful to the country, the people, and the world. Therefore, I suggest that the Senate sentence Pioneer Technology Company to hand over Dubai's core technology, or register technology patents, and completely give up its technology monopoly. Set a good example to the vast scientific and technological circles and maintain a good ecological development environment. After talking incessantly for nearly half an hour, Selden Caddis finally looked loudly at the senator on the far side, their own senator, and said, "Bye-bye, are you ready?" At this time, after listening to the Joker's speech, Killian whispered to Dubai in the headset. "Sir, it's ready. Okay, let's watch a video next. Let's start." After hearing what Baymax said, Killian smiled slightly, and then finished speaking to everyone. Everyone saw the internal experimental videos of major experimental companies headed by Alex appearing on the display screen not far away. It even included various anatomy and experiments on Baymax, and even the voices of several people instructing researchers to dissect Baymax in the laboratory were recorded. Especially in the speeches of several people, there is a clear video, in which the CEO of Pfizer said that he would spend money on Pioneer Technology to buy this technology. There is also Alfred Gerard, the recently stepped-down CEO of ABB Biopharmaceutical Company. In the video, he threatened to send Killian to meet Satan if he did not agree. As soon as these words came out, all the viewers who were sitting in front of the TV watching the live broadcast were in an uproar. Even the senator who originally supported them turned dark for a moment and pointed a trembling finger at Alex, but he still didn't recover and fainted in the next second. Alex also had a dark face, and even cold sweat began to break out on his forehead, and he quickly started to unplug the power cord of the display screen. But it was already too late. When he unplugged the power, all the people already knew it. Ha 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 ha, did you see it, people? These are the so-called pharmaceutical CEOs who are claiming equality for everyone and maintaining a good ecological environment under the guise of patriotism. But what are they actually doing? They are just deceiving and abducting in private, doing all kinds of evil, and are full of stupid pigs who burn, kill and plunder. Friends, I'm trying to come here today to listen to these clowns' explanations. What's the result? Tell me the truth, tell us. They are just a group of clowns, and I, Killian. One person, one company, can do far more than these clowns have done for decades, and even they have worked hard to even put the protective measures on the finished products that my family has produced. Can't even get in. Only one person and one company can benefit the people of the world with our products. Looking at the clown who turned pale with fright, Killian stood up at this moment and spoke loudly to the crowd and the camera. Then, seeing the commotion at the scene, the judge had no choice but to issue an order to adjourn the meeting. After hearing this, Killian walked outside without looking back. For him, cleaning up these companies is just a matter of convenience. Do you really think that the Dubai developed by his family has no backup? As long as someone wants to violently dismantle it, Dubai will activate the recording function, record the video of his life in all directions without blind spots, and then send it back remotely. Not to mention that Killian had already asked Dubai to prepare black materials from major companies in advance when Gerald wanted to take action against him. As a result, Gerald was dealt with by Kingpin, which made Killian suspend the idea of dealing with them. Unexpectedly, he didn't go to find them, but they took the initiative to come to his door. Now he was seeking death. How could Killian not help them? At the same time, along with Killian's speech, it was also spread by all the media, large and small, in the court. Pioneer technology is completely popular. Everyone knows that the most powerful companies in the United States want to destroy Pioneer technology because they cannot develop Baymax or even crack it. This is enough to prove the real awesomeness of Pioneer technology Dubai. It's enough to allow every pharmaceutical company with a scale of hundreds of billions or even trillions to deal with it, which is enough to see Dubai's cards. Ever since, the rush to buy Dubai has started again. Orders scheduled for 1 year later increased to 5 years later within this period, and even continued to increase. And this is on the premise that Pioneer technology continues to develop its own factories. The production speed can no longer keep up with the consumption speed of customers. On the other side, there are people watching this scene in front of the video. I didn't expect that there would be a higher profile person than me in New York City. At this moment, Tony, who had just finished debugging Jarvis and testing its functions, saw the scene where Killian was in the limelight after asking Jarvis to switch to the news channel. Tony couldn't help but complain. "Sir, according to Information Inquiry, you have indeed been keeping a low profile for some time. I have received a weapons development email from the military. Do I need to check it?" After hearing Tony's words, Jarvis replied in a mechanical electronic voice. "Check it out, let that guy do the limelight thing. After all, I am a low-key person." After hearing that there was an order from the military, Tony thought for a while and clicked to check it out. He felt that he preferred developing weapons to being in the limelight. And if Killian saw this scene here at this moment, he would probably be even more shocked. Because of Baymax's appearance, Jarvis's birth and intelligence improved even more obviously and earlier than in the original plot. However, Tony would not speak out as loudly as Killian about his Jarvis pseudo-artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is best developed secretly. Although he is arrogant, he can still understand the key things. On the other side, the reaction is different from that of other forces. As the instigator, Killian is already walking on the streets of Washington at this moment. He used to be afraid, but it's different now. With the protection of 2 ace bodyguards, as long as the soul is not transported back to 2008, he is not afraid. While walking along this way, Killian also saw the prosperity of the metropolis. Although the technological equipment could not keep up, the lively scenes and entertainment measures were still active in the streets and alleys. From time to time, there are street singers singing in the square, and various professional managers are constantly passing their business cards on the street with a flattering look, hoping to increase their business volume. Even when passing by a remote alley, there were several blonde beauties who wanted to run up and abduct Killian in. But before they could get close, they were stopped by 2 large walls. Killian naturally looked down upon these vulgar fans. He waved his hand and continued walking with a few bodyguards. "You cripple, you are going to beg for food this month and you only want this little. TMD, I can earn more than this from renting out your land. Do you really think that I am doing charity? Hit me." And just as Killian continued to stroll, in an alley not far away, after a voice fell, countless children begged for mercy instead. "Please, Brother Hanny, stop beating Brother 7. Next month we will definitely give you more points. Please, boss, The sounds of begging for mercy kept coming, and Killian, who originally didn't want to care about such nonsense, couldn't help but stop and walk towards the inside, and took a look behind the corner. Good guy, this is a disabled person and a disabled child, and he was punched and kicked by several big men. No. 1. Number 2, destroy them for me. For a moment, Killian's temper couldn't help but rise, and then he said to a few bodyguards on the side. Then as Killian's words fell, several gang members a few meters away were even preparing to continue fighting, when their vision went dark, and several adults had their spines broken and fainted with just one blow. Passed. This is their money. You can take it. It seems that they are also local snakes. Although I have people destroy them, I'm sure they will still cause trouble for you. Use this money to change to a city life. After asking people to collect all the money from the fallen people, Killian also took the $1,000 in cash he was carrying and handed it to the man who was lying on the ground surrounded by a group of children and said, "This." After hearing Killian's words, the man wanted to refuse, but after looking at his younger brothers and sisters, as well as the gang leader not far away, he knew that only a small part of the gang came to ask for the account today. That's all. If the gang boss knew that their men fell into his trap, he wouldn't need to tell him, but his brothers would definitely not have it easy. But, the world is so big, even if they take this money, where can they go? Except for him, the other brothers and sisters who are still here are still young, and he is disabled and the breadwinner of the family. If they don't live in a big city like this, they may not be able to survive in a small place. If they have to go down, starving to death as their only destiny. Sir, although I know this is too much to ask for. But I beg you, can you give me a chance? I can do anything for you, as long as you can adopt my brothers and sisters. I am a veteran. Although I have a broken leg, you believe me. As long as you promise, my loyalty will never be worse than anyone else. After hesitating for a while, the man who finally lay on the ground gritted his teeth, kowtowed hard to the man in front of him, and spoke. He knew that this was one of the few opportunities he had. During this spring festival, some of his younger brothers and sisters had caught colds and illnesses due to their poor living conditions, so he had exhausted all methods. Even if he didn't hand over the money this time, it was because he used it to buy medicine for his younger brothers and sisters. If it happened again, he might not even be able to survive this cold winter. To outsiders, it symbolizes a season of peace, beauty and family reunion. For those of them who make a living by wandering and begging, it is a hysterical desperate situation trying to survive. Quote. But at this moment, he looked at the floor in front of him that was already covered with blood in just a few seconds and in the blink of an eye, and the children were yelling and trying to hold the man back to prevent him from continuing. I have to admit that Killian finally relented. You said you would do anything for me. After condensing his eyes, Killian squatted down, stopped the other party from continuing to kowtow, and instead asked extremely seriously. Yes, anything. As long as you can let my brothers and sisters have a place to live and live healthily, I swear I will never disobey any of your orders, even if it means facing God or Satan directly. At the end of the sentence, the man looked at Killian in front of him with extremely firm eyes and said. For a moment, Killian seemed to see the eyes of those Black Watch soldiers looking at him when they were just born. Well, this is my business card. As long as you can lead your brothers and sisters to the address on the business card, I will recognize your ability and give you everything you want. As for your younger brothers and sisters, I will also send them to school. I can arrange for them to get married, have children and even work in the future, but, you have to show me your determination first. So, after looking at the man and the children beside him who looked at him with timid but hopeful eyes, Killian immediately spoke. After throwing away the money in his hand, Killian left with a few bodyguards. He can sympathize with the other person and help the other person, but he cannot sympathize and help without a bottom line. If this man can really come here with so many children with less than $2,000, then Killian will not be stingy about giving him a chance. Of course, if he couldn't find it, it didn't matter to him. Anyway, he had helped them solve the problem and left another $1,000, which was considered the most benevolent thing. It all depends on God's will. At this moment, he looked at the business card in his hand and looked at Killian, who disappeared around the corner with an extremely firm look. The man knew that this was the only chance for him and his family. It was up to him whether he would live or become a corpse in the sewer. Everything was for his family. Then, after the man carefully put the business card into his trouser pocket, he looked at the younger brothers and sisters beside him with a kind and charitable expression, and softly told them the next arrangements. Sometimes, even if there is no blood relationship, the friendship between them even goes far beyond that of family members. And that's what happened to the man and his younger brothers and sisters. On the other hand, after visiting Washington for a few days, Killian flew to New York immediately after receiving a call from Kennedy. Evening, outside the suburbs of New York, in a secret military base. As a large transport helicopter landed, Killian walked down escorted by bodyguards. Ha ha ha, come, let me introduce to you. This is Mr. Killian, the president of Pioneer Technology. Killian, this is General Ross, whom you have repeatedly asked me to ask out. After watching Killian walk straight towards Kennedy and Ross, who were already waiting not far away from the tarmac, Kennedy, who was not far away, also walked forward with a smile on his face and took the initiative to introduce the two. Road. And with Kennedy's mediation, the meeting between the two went smoother than expected. I heard that Congressman Kennedy said that you have very good weapons to sell to us. After a brief exchange of greetings, General Ross spoke directly, with a tone that was characteristic of military personnel. Of course, otherwise I wouldn't have asked Congressman Kennedy several times to ask you to come out. Trust me, you won't regret my product. After hearing Rose directly raise the topic, Killian did not continue to be polite but spoke. Please look over here. Allow me to introduce you to Tyrant. A project centered on deeply exploring the potential of biological cells, the T0 series Tyrant is produced based on the gorilla. Although it is not equipped with any weapons at this stage, it is the most threatening weapon in itself. It can not only ignore the output of bullets, but can even resist rockets without dying. And as long as you give it time, it can recover in a blink of an eye and continue fighting. After seeing the researchers push down the cryo chamber of the freezer Tyrant, Killian took the two of them to the side of the cryo chamber, and then introduced them to them through the transparent glass directly above it. Here are the video files we recorded during the laboratory stage on its resilience, physical endurance and destructive power. You too can take a look. After taking the laptop handed over by the researcher on the side, Killian opened the video and handed it to the two of them. After seeing the video files on the laptop, both of them couldn't help but fell silent. To be honest, they didn't expect that after Dr. Erkins, there would be someone who could implement the super soldier plan. And to be honest, even without this video, neither General Ross, who has experienced hundreds of battles, nor Congressman Kennedy, who has extensive experience, have no doubt about the lethality of the guy who is being frozen in front of him. Just facing the 3-meter-tall big man is already breathless, let alone his face that is like a centipede, ferocious appearance. I've seen the video, and to be honest I don't think the bit of information in the video can indicate anything. Show me. After watching the video on his laptop, General Ross handed it to the researcher on the side, then looked at Killian in front of him and said, "Of course it's no problem, I just don't know, General, how do you want to test it? But no matter what kind of test is done, I need to state one thing before the test. This Tyrant is very powerful and can easily kill people." Regarding Rose's proposal, Killian just shrugged his shoulders and then reminded him. "Oh, don't worry, I'm afraid your weapon isn't powerful enough." After hearing Killian's words, General Ross just smiled meaningfully at this moment, then took out his walkie-talkie and walked to the other side to give instructions to his men. "Okay, come with me, it's time for you to perform." After a while, after finishing speaking, General Ross came back and said to Killian. Then, under the leadership of Ross, a group of people set off from the military base, one armored vehicle after another, and a number of helicopters also followed. Killian, Ross and Kennedy happened to be on the plane in the middle. This time the target is a terrorist organization's hideout in Florida. It is located on a remote mountain cliff. They have established a hiding place there. I have asked people to block all the roads down the mountain. Then it's time to watch your performance. This is information for terrorists. After taking the laptop handed by the deputy, Ross said as he handed it to Killian. Quote. If the information you gave me is correct, this should be a gang or a drug cartel, right? After seeing the video information given by General Ross in front of him, as expected, something unexpected happened. After being silent for a long time, Killian couldn't help but speak. Haha, is there any difference? I said he was a den of terrorists, and he was. If you have guns, are armed, are organized, and are a threat to the country, why don't they count? In response to Killian's question, General Ross just lit a cigarette and took a puff before speaking. As expected of an iron-blooded general, I admire him. The country is blessed to have you. After hearing Rose's explanation, Killian just said, haha, as long as you can complete this mission well and let us see the power of real super soldiers, then it will be a real blessing to the country. Rose just laughed at Killian's flattery. For him, his biggest wish is to see Captain America born in the laboratory again. You must know that a Captain America led the United States to win World War II. If they had a division of Captain America, let alone win the war, the whole world will crawl at their feet. However, Killian on the side did not know these thoughts of Rose. Otherwise, they will definitely say that the other party does not know the heights of the world. The reason why Captain America became Captain America is because he has a strong American belief. Anyone else, even if they are injected with the same serum as Steve, can only become Captain America. Just a puppet dominated by amplified desires. But at this time, Killian took the information and went to the researcher behind the console to start handing over the information. It doesn't take a while. Located in Florida, beneath the Wailaka Mountains. At this moment, soldiers from a modern mechanical regiment, under Ross's order, had secretly surrounded this place without the knowledge of the drug dealers on the mountain. And in the command vehicle at the temporary base at the foot of the mountain. Killian and Kennedy Ross stood behind the researchers attentively, watching them operate the computer. Start to loosen the restrictions on the experimental body bit by bit. The neural inhibitory center connection has been disconnected. Strong sedatives have been disconnected. The limb restraints are on. With the emergence of one command after another on the computer. High above the mountains, a transport helicopter flew towards the top of the mountain with an iron can hanging on it. At this moment, feeling the sudden sound of the helicopter, the drug dealers who were already playing cards and having fun in the room couldn't help but pick up their guns and became alert. Then they saw the helicopter flying towards them in the distance, getting closer and closer, and everyone felt a sense of uneasiness in their hearts. You know, not many people come here usually, let alone helicopters. Their boss does have a helicopter, but it's like nothing else. How could he fly a helicopter to a place like this? Not only is the target big, but the location is easily exposed. Boss, do you want to shoot it down? At this time, looking through the window in the room, looking at the helicopter getting closer and closer, a small boss pointed to the boss on the side and said to a super large weapons box not far away. Don't be anxious yet, let's see what it is going to do. Regarding his subordinate's proposal, the boss just thought about it and temporarily pressed it down. After all, this is a complete production base that they spent a lot of money to build. If this shot takes it down, it will definitely be exposed. The risk is too great. In this way, when the man refuses, they will face the most regretful moment later. Kakakaka. Single quote. When the helicopter flew 100 meters above the house on the top of the mountain, it was accompanied by the crisp sound of several steel ropes breaking. Everyone saw that a cylinder hanging on the plane suddenly smashed down. For a moment, no one dared to stay where they were. Everyone was running towards the housing area in a hurry, fearing that they would be smashed into pieces if they ran a little slower. Boom. Single quote. Immediately after landing with a huge sound, the entire mountaintop returned to calm again. In the eyes of everyone, the original helicopter also threw down the iron can and flew straight away into the distance. Boss, this. At this time, looking at everything that was happening in front of him, the man couldn't help but ask the boss beside him with a puzzled look on what to do next. Ask a few men to go take a look. After thinking for a while, the boss said to the younger brother beside him. After listening, the younger brother pointed to a few people with whom he usually had not a good relationship, and then asked them to go and see the situation regardless of their crying expressions. The problem now is that everyone knows something is wrong, but no one knows what will happen. As for the few unlucky ones who were selected, even if they didn't want to when the boss was present to speak, they could only walk towards the place where a big hole had been made with a sad face, step by step. The road that was so close at first was actually taken by the two of them for an extremely long time at this moment. Then just when the three of them finally arrived in front of the huge pit, the boss who was not far away wanted to stop urging them. And just when one of them, Huang Mao, was about to get closer and take a closer look, a wordless terror instantly enveloped him. In an instant, Huang Mao immediately retreated, and at the same time reflexively took out the gun in his hand. What's wrong? After seeing this, the two people walking beside them couldn't help but ask. Something's wrong. That sign, I saw it before when I was in school. Huang Mao chose to trust his instincts and stepped back step by step as he spoke. That's a sign. What does it mean? Forget it, leave him alone, let's drive. When we go back later, the boss will take care of him. And just when one of them wanted to ask clearly, another black man on the side immediately pulled the other person's sleeve and said, "Bang, single quote, bang, single quote, comma." And just when the two were about to jump down to see what was going on, suddenly a huge knocking sound began to come from the inside of the tin can. Even drug dealers in the room dozens of meters away could hear it clearly. When they heard this knocking sound, everyone's face instantly turned pale. You know, it was an iron can that fell from a height of hundreds of meters. But at this time, there was something inside that could make such a loud noise. In just a moment, all kinds of thoughts filled everyone's minds. But feeling the boss's power, no one dared to say unnecessary words. Unlike the drug dealers in the room, the two people standing next to the huge pit at this moment were facing the most terrifying pressure. The guns in their hands began to be involuntarily pointed at the iron can in the center. Bang, single quote. Immediately following the violent shaking, the two people who were originally on the edge of the giant pit were suddenly dropped by the sudden strong shaking of the ground. Roar, ah, bang bang bang. At this time, in front of everyone in the house, they only saw the two companions falling after a loud noise. What followed was a roar like a beast, a wail of pain, and the sound of bullets being fired continuously. But it didn't last long, as a sudden burst of blood mist spewed out of the pit, and everything returned to tranquility. After everyone in the room saw this, everyone was so frightened that their whole bodies began to tremble. You know, those were two people with weapons, actually. The rest of the people didn't dare to think about it anymore. Everyone, all weapons are loaded. Faith, you go and take out all our heavy firepower. I want to see what kind of monster it is. Although he was also frightened at this time, the leader at this moment knew that if he did not stand up, the people on his side might be scared away before the other party could take action, and then said to the deputy on the side. Then after hearing the boss's instructions, everyone began to run quickly and slowly to take out various heavy weapons on the weapon racks, including submachine guns, assault rifles and even grenade launchers. It's just like a small military organization. On the other side, through the video sent back from the scene, after seeing this scene, Killian was no wonder that Ross had designated them as a terrorist organization before this. At this scale, if you don't pay attention, you can start an uprising. If I don't destroy you, I will destroy someone else. And the other side, just after everyone in the room returned to the window with various heavy weapons, everyone felt a sufficient sense of security in their hearts. In their opinion, no matter what it is, even if Captain America comes, they can focus the fire and kill him here. But this thought was thrown away just in the next second. I saw a huge figure jumping up from the giant pit, and then when it came to the ground, everyone present discovered the fact that they still underestimated their imagination. In the open space not far away, under the illumination of outdoor lights, a giant with a height of more than 3 meters appeared clearly in front of everyone. Even the opponent's ragged skin, terrifying and ferocious face, coupled with the huge body, especially the huge blood-filled claws on the monster's right hand. This. At this moment, everyone looked at the giant not far away with extremely shocked eyes. Some even had their mouths trembling, wanting to say something, but because of excessive nervousness, they did not know how to formulate the words. Bang, single quote. Everyone's index finger, which was originally tense on the trigger, couldn't help but relax. At this moment, everyone was afraid that if they fired, they would offend this giant beast from hell. It's just that they give each other time, but the T0 Tyrant at this moment will not give them time. In his perception, there were countless prey waiting for him to hunt in the house in front of him. Then, the tyrant looked towards the house with his scarlet eyes, and the people inside were also facing their opponents, and their hearts seemed to be pinched by an invisible big hand. Bang bang bang. Single quote. At this moment, with the sound of the first gunshot, everyone could no longer hold back and began to release the bullets in their hands. Go to hell, you monster. Mom mess with fake. Come on guo jiazi. This moment seemed to be to vent the fear in their hearts, and it seemed to be to liven up the atmosphere. Everyone was venting and shouting. At this moment, the house was extremely dazzlingly illuminated by the gunpowder from countless guns. Roar. However, when their bullets hit the tyrant, what they got was not its collapse, but its incomparable anger. The wildness of the beast that was imprinted in its DNA also emerged in an instant. As the tyrant began to sprint, in just a blink of an eye, the tyrant broke through the door and directly tore into pieces the man who was hiding behind the door and shooting at him. At this moment, everyone watching the opponent at such a close distance discovered that the opponent's body was full of holes where bullets had been shot, and he began to slowly push the bullets out, as if being squeezed out by a powerful force. Strange monster. At this moment, after facing the tyrant at close range, everyone began to get into chaos. Some people were shooting, some were running away, and some were shouting hysterically, wanting to fight this monster to the death. But without exception, these people were torn to pieces by the tyrant amidst screams. And just after the tyrant grabbed a figure with his huge hand, squeezed it casually, and crushed his head, a voice rang not far away. Hey, big guy. After the tyrant turned around, he saw a man with yellow hair, holding a rocket launcher and looking at him with a smile on his face. Try your daddy's big treasure. Awful. Then the man roared loudly, and a rocket flew rapidly from the launcher towards the tyrant. Boom. Single quote. Then there was a huge explosion, and a huge flame suddenly rose up where the monster originally stood, burning continuously. At this moment, the figure enveloped by the raging fire was still moving. The man's smiling face that had originally risen had fallen down at this moment. He couldn't believe how terrifying the monster would be if it were still alive under the rocket launcher. But within a short time, the monster fell down. And it was only after seeing this scene that the man's disappeared smile appeared. You have to scare me even if you die. After spitting out a curse word, the man collapsed to the ground completely weak. He didn't know what kind of courage it was that allowed him to face the monster head on. But luckily it's all over. Just looking at the now shattered den, the man's originally rising smile couldn't help but collapse. You must know that he spent a lot of money to invest in this research and development base, and now everything is gone. But what the man didn't notice was that after the heart of the monster that fell to the ground stopped beating, a strange orange light began to slowly light up. And the other side, it seems that the weapon you were proud of was ended hastily by these people. On the other side, as the tyrant fell, the monitor connected to the tyrant's eyeball on Killian's researcher's laptop also went offline, and the entire computer fell into a black screen. At this time, General Ross beside him also he couldn't help but said with disappointment. Originally looking at the monster's scary appearance and exaggerated size, he thought it would give him a bigger surprise this time. Unexpectedly, such a monster was defeated by a drug trafficking organization so easily. After finishing speaking, Ross was ready to leave the two of them behind and led his men up to clear the area and then go back. You must know that for this operation, he reported to the superiors to clean up the terrorist organization, and now Ross feels very annoyed. General Ross, maybe I think we should be a little patient. If I were you, I would prepare your men for the true horrors they will face. But before he could walk out, Killian's unhurried voice came. You must know that no matter which model of Tyrant it is, its terrifying version will never be the version before restrictions. After death, it is the moment when they truly get rid of restrictions and fully exert their power. Roar. Boom. At this time, as if to prove what Killian said, a huge roar came from the top of the mountain. The sound was so loud that even people at the foot of the mountain could feel the huge sonic boom coming towards them. At this moment, after hearing this roar, many of the soldiers present had a look of shock on their faces. They really couldn't imagine what kind of creature could make such a deafening roar. Even the legendary dragon is impossible. Do you have any backup plans? Unlike the shock and panic of the soldiers, Rose at this moment retracted his steps to turn around, then looked at Killian with curiosity and excitement and asked, Allow me to introduce to you, Tyrant T000, the second form, the liberation form. Of course, I personally still like to call it the destruction form. When it performs the mission of destruction, if the normal control form cannot destroy the enemy, and then is destroyed, it will automatically trigger the second form. At this time, its comprehensive value will increase several times and dozens of times, destroying much more powerful than before. If the former is still a weapon, then in the liberated form, it is a real humanoid nuclear bomb. It destroys everything in sight and is very difficult to kill. After hearing Rose's question, Killian immediately spoke with a smile on his face. Although others are in the company, they are also checking the progress report of the T-Virus project at any time, and the T-Series Tyrant is also the focus of his future cooperation with the military, so he will naturally pay more attention to it. Therefore, he told Samuel his future development direction after Tyrant and some research topics in advance, so that their team no longer had to take many detours of exploration and could directly take shortcuts. And what you get for this is the biological Tyrant in front of you that is comparable to the Umbrella T002 Tyrant. You know, in the Umbrella Company, even Wesker sighed repeatedly when he saw the T002 Tyrant, calling it a unique combat weapon. This is enough to show its terrifying deterrence. And now, this weapon appears in this world in a more perfect form through the hands of Killian. Is it that powerful? After Killian finished speaking, Rose couldn't sit still at this moment. He came up with wide eyes and said excitedly, "You know, if they really have the power that Killian said, then they will form an army of tyrants, and there will be no need to worry about the unification of the world. How about we test its combat effectiveness later?" In response to Rose's words, Killian just smiled meaningfully and then suggested, "How to test?" While the two were talking, no one noticed, and the military's on-site surveillance was also plunged into darkness. When the time comes, you pull out your army and gather them all together, and it will come over on its own. Let your army open fire with all its strength without any worries. I will bear all the losses. At this time, Killian continued, "Haha, you want its actual combat data, right? But no problem. If it's really as good as you say, I can sign a contract with you on behalf of the military right now." Regarding Killian's proposal, Ross immediately understood what the other party was up to, but he didn't care and agreed on the spot. Then, as the two of them hit it off, the army that had originally surrounded the foot of the mountain suddenly began to gather towards an open area. For a while, it didn't take long. 5 tanks, a dozen armored vehicles, and thousands of soldiers began to quietly point their guns in the direction coming down the mountain from the completed position. No one knew what they were about to face, but judging from the terrifying roars coming from the mountain from time to time, they all knew that it was an extremely terrifying creature. But none of them flinched, because every one of them had come down from the battlefield. The orders of superiors are absolutely carried out, unless it is really necessary to surrender without being held accountable. But they all believed that this moment would never come. Boom! At this time, a burst of fire suddenly erupted from the top of the mountain not far away, and the sound of big explosions was heard endlessly. Action! At this moment, following the order from Ross in the command room, in front of everyone's eyes, a helicopter loaded with heavy machine guns flew out of the position and flew straight towards the top of the mountain not far away. Command, the target has been found. Do you want to fire? Repeat, do you want to fire? Not long after flying out, the pilot on the plane discovered the huge monster in the raging fire, and then picked up the walkie-talkie and said, "Fire! Lead the target down the mountain." Following Ross's order, the heavy machine gun on the plane immediately sprayed towards the monster with a storm of bullets. Roar! After feeling the sudden and violent blow on his body, the tyrant, who had no target at all, became violent again at this moment, roaring at the big bird in the sky. Then he started to run hard, using the force to get up and down the tree, and then jumped towards the plane. After seeing this scene, the driver, who originally thought the distance was safe enough, couldn't help feeling anxious at this moment, and then began to pull up the operating lever forcefully toward the sky above and behind him. At this moment, the driver could even see the monster's scarlet claws narrowly scratching in front of his windshield. But in the end, due to distance issues, the monster fell heavily again. At this moment, the driver finally knew what monster he was facing. Then, without daring to stop for a moment, he turned the plane around and flew back in the direction it came from. But he didn't forget about this mission. After calling on the soldiers at the machine gun position to continue firing, he fully opened the throttle. Command, report, the target has been attracted to the scene, and head-on contact is expected in 30 seconds. Okay, give the order immediately, everyone is on alert, and fire as soon as possible after seeing the target. After hearing the news from the pilot, Ross immediately became happy and gave the order on the spot. At the same time, the soldiers who were currently on the front line saw that the armed helicopter that had gone away began to come back at several times the speed before and continued to fire at the place behind them that roared from time to time. At this moment, everyone knew that at this moment, the real battlefield was coming. At this time, everyone's index finger has been tightly clasping the trigger of the machine gun, and all the tanks have been loaded. Every soldier is on high alert, waiting for the enemy to appear and deliver a fatal blow. Bang bang bang. Single quote. The next second later, a huge figure suddenly jumped out from the distant hillside, and everyone began to pour bullets from their machine guns crazily. I'm afraid that if I'm too slow, the monster will rush over. Boom. Single quote. Boom. Single quote. Comma. As the soldiers in front opened fire, the main battle tanks located at the front also aimed their gun barrels at the target, and then fired at each other one after another. But this time, faced with heavy firepower suppression, the monster's attack, which was still going forward, was immediately stopped by the metal storm. At this moment, the monster's body can be said to be full of flesh and blood, and countless pieces of flesh are flying in all directions. However, as if it has become more injured and has naturally learned to be smarter, the monster actually started to lift the surrounding rubble and move towards the army. Smash it. Time after time, although they could not break through the army's defense, the fire suppression of the monsters was not as great as before. And taking advantage of this opportunity, the monster suddenly took a big step and rushed towards the main battle tank. In just the blink of an eye, it broke through the fire blockade and came to the main battle tank. Using its huge claws, it was torn open like a piece of white paper. However, at this time, the soldiers had already reacted and started using howitzers, RPGs, and grenades to attack the monsters one after another for free. After feeling the huge pressure, the monster pushed the tank on the side and flew it away, and hit another main battle tank not far away. Since then, the two main battle tanks have been scrapped. But it wasn't over yet. After knowing that after destroying the two main battle tanks, the pressure on his whole body was reduced a lot, the monster set his sights on the remaining 3 tanks, and then ignored the soldiers. Attack it, but run straight towards the remaining 3 tanks. Okay, start the hibernation program. At this time, after seeing that the fire was almost done, Killian, who was in the war room, said to the researcher on the side. To avoid any eventuality, he had already prepared his helicopter. If the sleep program failed, he would have no choice but to say sorry to Ross. There is no way, no matter how well prepared they are, in reality, various unexpected situations will occur. No matter how advanced the civilization or technology is, it is impossible to avoid it. Fortunately, although the surveillance video in the Tyrant was damaged, as the researcher entered the command on the computer immediately received the signal from the backhand placed in the Tyrant's heart. Then the hibernation program starts running. The Tyrant, who had already destroyed 2 more main battle tanks, finally came tremblingly in front of the only remaining tank. Just when it was about to stretch out its giant claws and destroy the hateful guy in front of it, a straight line of fire struck. The feeling of powerlessness that hit the soul swept over him instantly. At this moment, the Tyrant collapsed straight down. Fake, what on earth is this? At this moment, looking at the Tyrant lying there not far away, Ross couldn't help but say in shock. You must know that at that moment, he really wanted to order a retreat. This monster, no, even a demon-like creature. Is this kind of power really something that humans can possess? You must know that before this, the reason why Ross had deep thoughts on human enhancement was because Captain America could lead a small team to attack Wonglong by himself and destroy the opponent's command system. And, this thing in front of me. He couldn't even imagine that if he had a battalion, no, even a small team, he could directly destroy a modern legion head-on. It was so terrifying. Before this, he had never dared to imagine that there were carbon-based creatures that could survive the bombing of modern firepower without any damage. But now it was as if God had made a joke on him. Not only that, but in the end, if the controller of this monster hadn't shut down the opponent, their whole group might have to confess on the spot. The most powerful biological weapon in the world at present. As long as you give it time, it will become the main battle soldier of mankind in the future and the main labor force for resource extraction on alien planets. If you have enough money, it will be used to exploit various resources such as oil, coal, and mines. It can do all the physical work. 24 hours a day, 1,000 working hours, no breaks, no holidays, no wages, completely at your discretion, and all you have to pay is an occasional meal of meat. A tyrant can guarantee you at least 200 years of use. After hearing Rose's words, Killian at this moment also signaled the researchers to start recycling the tyrant, and then came to Rose's side and spoke. So how much are you going to sell it for? Glancing at Killian aside, Rose immediately spoke. This time Rose truly recognized Killian's products. Of course, in Rose's eyes, the enthusiasm for the super soldier development project at this moment has never been stronger. Haha, these words are too early. I believe you have seen the current tyrants. We only have restrictive means, but no control means. We are not very mature yet. Regarding Rose's proposal, Killian just smiled and said. So, at this time, Rose tilted his head and looked at Killian and asked. A businessman came not to sell products, but took the initiative to say that the technology was not yet mature. This was the first time he had seen this kind of sales method. So, why not do this? We will provide a technical team for free, and your army will provide some support and help us test the actual combat data of the tyrant in the future. Of course, our company will pay for all consumption during the battle. Then, I hope General Ross that you can convince the military to support our company when it launches certain bills in the future. After meeting Rose's gaze, Killian spoke directly. For him, the support of the military is also a top priority, so he doesn't mind paying more for it, or earning less in the future. What bill? You need to give me a rough idea, otherwise no matter how good your product is, I won't be able to make a promise to you. Although Rose was a little moved by Killian's proposal, it was only because the free ones were often the most expensive. He didn't want to become a military traitor because of his temporary decision. As you can see, although the Tyrant T000 is powerful, it has serious intellectual defects. Even in its normal form, we cannot control it normally, such as issuing some simple commands. In the final analysis, the intelligence of living things other than humans is too low. Coupled with the erosion of our products, the intelligence will be even more seriously reduced. Therefore, this also leads to the fact that this kind of weapon can only be used to drop missiles without any friendly forces, battlefield. As a weapon, it's still a failure. At this moment, Killian was telling the tyrant's shortcomings bit by bit. He had every reason to believe that Rose was even more perfect and mature than he wanted the tyrant to be. Because he is just a businessman who makes weapons, even if this weapon fails, he can still research other ones. Ross and the others are people who use weapons. They can judge intuitively whether a weapon is good or not. But now, there are weapons that are comparable to the power of small nuclear weapons at no cost, and there is hope that they can achieve the efficient execution of special forces. How could he refuse? So you want to do human trials? Hey, for a company as big as yours, why can't you still find donors who agree to human trials? After looking at Killian, who nodded noncommittally after he finished speaking first, Rose couldn't help but look at him with a surprised look on his face and said. It was like suddenly discovering a giant dragon egg in a mouse nest. You must know that there is no shortage of human trials in the United States, because all drugs must undergo human trials before they can be released. Therefore, as early as 1947, the American medical and legal circles took the lead in drafting the Nuremberg Code as the moral basis for the Nuremberg trials after World War II. The code clearly recognizes that human experimentation with the consent of the subject is legal. Even after that, scandals related to human experimentation broke out because the government conducted human experimentation without the written consent of the parties involved. Therefore, the government finally issued regulations requiring hospitals and various medical institutions to obtain written consent from patients for all similar human experiments. But as we all know, consent can also be interpreted. So although the law has been improved a lot since then, many companies still start human trials after obtaining the donor's consent. Although the process is a bit tortuous, for a rising pharmaceutical company like Krynn, this should not be a big deal. Haha, of course it's easy to find experimenters, but it's hard to find qualified experimental subjects. Just like the Tyrant you see now, we spent tens of millions of dollars on bounties around the world to select the one with the best physique among dozens of the world's best chimpanzees. It can be said that it itself is already in better shape than an adult. Not to mention that those who voluntarily signed the consent form are basically seriously ill and their bodies are almost disabled. My company has no interest in doing charity. Krynn naturally knew what Rose said, and then continued to speak as if he didn't understand. Of course he knew what the other party meant by consent, but he would not wade through this muddy water. Then he would be picked out by superheroes for illegal experiments and attacked, and then the news would break out and be condemned by the media. What he needs is the government and the military, both of which support their Bill of Rights. That is to say, those who violate major laws, such as murder, robbery and other major bad incidents, are sentenced to death, deprived of human rights, and no longer enjoy the protection of national laws. After his death, the government organizes and donates his body to contribute to medicine. Of course, for the last one, Krynn will be placed in the most inconspicuous position. His own purpose is only to deprive these people of their human rights. They are all a bunch of scum in the first place, why can't they be reused? You must know that the T-virus is a treasure trove, and every living thing, and even every person, will allow it to have endless evolutionary routes. What Krynn needs to do is to discover and choose the best route. Just like the Tyrant that Umbrella Company was able to successfully develop later, it was by chance that it found a Russian soldier who was extremely strong and healthy and would not even become violent due to the virus. Later, the soldier's body was used to produce clones, creating conditions for the birth of the perfect Tyrant. And now Krynn is also looking for such a person. As for the exchange, that is too expensive and is not considered. And at this stage, what he needs is to slowly paint the cake for the military, rather than feed it to them in one bite. For example, right now, in just one night, the Tyrant TOOO earned him more than 6,000 reputations. And what if Krynn exchanges the complete Tyrant? The same scene, the same occasion, the maximum is 6,000. But if they are distributed to each other, it will be different. They will be harvested repeatedly and the versions will be updated iteratively. This is the basic operation for a good enterprise and a good company to develop stably in the long run. Haha, you really think long term. On the other side, after listening to Krynn's words, Rose smiled contemptuously. For Ross, Krynn's behavior is obviously a thankless job. He has to be a scoundrel and a monument. It is nothing more than wanting to put the company on the moral high ground in advance and make it within the scope of the law. In this way, even if the previous Radman incident occurs again, it will only be within the scope of the law. It's just that these things are obviously agreed upon by everyone. You can easily work on your own in private, but you have to put it out in the open and let everyone promote it together. Even Ross can now imagine what kind of financial and material resources will be spent behind the promotion of this bill. In this regard, Ross has only one comment, and that is that he has too much money and is very hot. But for this, he didn't say anything. Anyway, it will be nothing more than some moral and human rights issues at that time, and it won't cause much trouble. Krynn is willing to touch this mine, so go ahead. But if it's just a bill related to human experimentation, then I can answer you now without any questions. You may even gain more allies by then. Then Rose dropped these words, turned around and walked out. Now the cooperation between the two parties has been officially reached. The military later used the Tyrants and teams provided by Krynn for free during the experiment, and correspondingly, in subsequent legislation, they had to stand up to support them. And these things happened to be not difficult for Rose, so it was better to be a convenient favor. The same was true for Krynn. After getting what he wanted, he also looked at Congressman Kennedy. And both of them looked at each other and smiled. Although the two did not make any money this time, sometimes relationships can be a huge asset. As long as you use it properly, it will even be more shocking than real money. Immediately after instructing the researchers on site to carefully clean up and recover all the Tyrant organizations on site, Krynn and Kennedy flew back to Miami together. The next day, after arriving at the company, Krynn called Dr. Otto, another scientific researcher who had spent a lot of money to recruit, the real name of Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man is Otto Octavius, into the office. In the MCU world, because Spider-Man is just in elementary school, Dr. Otto is still just a physicist who is passionate about physics and thermonuclear objects. Moreover, the other party in this world had no idea of building a reactor. By chance, Killian discovered that the other party was still doing research in the university, so he recruited him to be mainly responsible for the signal development project. And this is Killian's next plan. Lay out 5G signals and enter the smartphone industry. This was finally decided by Killian after many considerations. Because no matter where Killian develops in the future, signal transmission will be the most important issue. Artificial intelligence processing and robot operation require a large amount of data processing and signal transmission as the core. The reason why the current Baymax has high intelligence is because the Baymax technology that Killian redeemed in the system includes advanced processing chips. Now, if we reduce it and add the development of signal technology, an epic-making smartphone will take the world by storm. We must know that in an era when the public is still using the newly launched 2G signal mobile phones, and most of them are flip cover and slide cover phones, it is needless to say how influential full-touch smartphones are. You can imagine how terrifying the current Apple mobile phone would have been in 2000. And let alone signals. Now even the most technologically advanced US military only uses 3G signals, and 4G signals are still in theory. Killian directly started investing in 5G signals, which is enough to monopolize the entire high-tech industry. Boss, you are looking for me. At this time, Dr. Otto opened the door and walked in, and then said with a smile to Killian in front of him. Here is the latest 4G signal technology, take a look first. After seeing Dr. Otto come in, Killian handed the project technical information that had been prepared on the table to him. Full duplex technology, MIMO, waveform improvement, network slicing. Is this 4G signal technology? This is simply incredible. I always thought these technologies should still be theoretical. At this time, after receiving the information handed over by Killian, Dr. Alto looked at it carefully for a while, and then after a series of surprised expressions about the information and technology that appeared in it, he only had a look on his face after reading it. Killian said, looking at Killian in disbelief. You must know that he initially thought that these materials were just a reference, or a general research direction. What he did not expect was that all the core technical content had been written here. There are even notes in each core. It's a simple instruction manual. Even a student fresh out of school can make it. Haha. Our company has always been committed to benefiting the people in the field of science and technology. And 4G signal technology is also a technology we have been researching, but it has just begun to mature recently, and the person in charge resigned, so I thought of you. How about it? Do you have the confidence to complete it? After hearing what Dr. Otto said, Killian also explained casually. No problem at all. Dr. Otto nodded decisively. Very good. After you take the information back to the laboratory and understand it thoroughly, you will be mainly responsible for the company's next communication project. Then there is also a piece of information about the latest smartphone, Pioneer. I ask you to use it as a template, combined with Dubai's smart chips, to turn them into reality within a month, make them physical, and complete the test. Can you do it? Then Killian handed a piece of relevant technical information about a high-end smartphone to Alto and said with a serious face. Haha, it's quite a challenge. Wait for my good news, boss. After hearing that Killian finally put pressure on him, Dr. Otto smiled in relief at this time, and then after finishing speaking, he picked up the information and walked towards his laboratory. After watching the office door close again, Killian turned around and looked at the sky outside the window. To be honest, these materials are already made. It can be said that as long as they are copied, they will be successful. However, if one person does it, it will take too long. He must need high-tech talents to assist him. And in the future, it will inevitably be like now. He provides the core technology and final effect, and these people are needed to integrate and innovate in the middle. And this is the purpose of Killian's recruitment at all costs. It's a pity that Dubai still doesn't help him enough in artificial intelligence. Otherwise, his scientific research progress will be even greater. In order to improve the level of Dubai's artificial intelligence, in addition to the necessary host hardware equipment that needs to undergo several generations of comprehensive upgrades, it must also reach an environment where the internet is used all over the world. And this means that the birth of artificial intelligence not only requires excellent hardware, but also requires the soil in which it is born, that is, everyone in the world uses smart devices. In this way, Dubai can truly break away from the chip server and exist in the network, and truly improve his capabilities in all aspects. Unlock the power of artificial intelligence. And it is at this time that the real horror of artificial intelligence begins. Now Krynn can only let Dubai's intelligence system in the laboratory, cooperating with the researchers to process various data calculations. It is conceivable that with the help of Dubai and his constant and terrifying learning efficiency, the data that was originally complex and took a long time to deduce was shortened by more than half of the time. And this is why the T-Virus project is progressing so quickly. As we all know, the most difficult part of experiments is often the data part, which happens to be the most basic point of artificial intelligence. Adding the two together, the result is 1 + 1 greater than 2. Boss, project number 2 was successfully researched. Just as Krynn started to process the documents, a member of the Black Watch team came in and reported to Krynn. After hearing what the other party said, Krynn immediately showed a happy expression, dropped the document, and strode towards the underground research room. After a while, after going through numerous security and password doors, Krynn arrived at a medical laboratory. Boss. After seeing Krynn come in, the researcher in charge, Elias Banega, also spoke to Krynn at this moment. Well, how's it going now? After nodding, Krynn turned his attention to a man lying on a bed in the sterile room not far away and said, Boss, everything is ready, and the biological experiment has been successful. Now please allow me to introduce you to the specific project situation. First of all, our experimenter is the man in the room now. His identity is a veteran who retired from the battlefield, but his wife and child almost died tragically due to the onset of PTSD, post-war traumatic stress disorder, after returning. After we learned about the other party's situation, we contacted the other party as soon as possible, and the other party was very cooperative and signed the experimental consent form. Now we will combine the memory editing of Project T and our latest brain control chip as the basis, and a brain control chip that can control the target brain, modify memory fragments and change cognition has been born. Boss, the main purpose of our experiment this time is that we will delete part of the target's war memories, and fragment and blur most of them to reduce the experimenter's impression of the battlefield without losing his memory. Then we add some memories to it, and then the combination ends up being a perfect memory that is complete and untouched. Based on the responses of animal experiments alone, human brain control chips are already mature and feasible. Now it's the final human experiment, everything is waiting for your order. At this time, Elias Bain on the side took the project information in his hand and began to report seriously to Krynn. Let's start. Then as Kylian's order was issued, the staff in the laboratory immediately became busy. A doctor also came to the laboratory with the assistance of his deputy, fixed the experimenter who had already been injected with anesthetics for general anesthesia on the nearby medical cabin equipped with a robotic arm, and then followed the operation. The mechanical arm also tightly clasped the man's limbs. After the target was completely fixed, the doctor on the side walked to the side of the surgical equipment, signaled the assistant to shave it, and performed all-round disinfection. The doctor then started to get busy. He first checked and confirmed the surgical location, and then with a gentle stroke of the scalpel, a perfect circle the size of a fingernail instantly appeared on the back of the target's head. Immediately afterwards, after using various medical equipment to drill holes, the skin and the skull were immediately pulled out, revealing the bright red flesh and hard brain bones unique to the creature inside. At this time, the doctor set his sights on the translucent brain meninges at the deepest level. After carefully holding the brain control chip that had been placed in the prepared disinfectant, the man inserted it straight from the wound and deep into the meningeal layer. The implantation was completed in just a few seconds, and then other deputies who had been prepared began to inject wound adhesive glue into the wound and reposition the cut bones back. This kind of wound adhesive glue is also specially exchanged by Krynn in medical technology. It is a high-tech medical agent. It not only has a very strong bonding effect and can be effectively applied to bone bonding, but also has anti-inflammatory, sterilizing and cell-accelerating properties. rapid healing capabilities. And because the latter is also useful for bone cells, it was exchanged by Krynn. Its effect can accelerate the healing speed of wounds that often take dozens of days to heal by several times or even dozens of times. The operation was completely completed in just 1 hour. The medical staff inside confirmed that the experimenter's vital signs were stable and everything was normal, and then took a stand. But for everyone in the research room, now is the real beginning. A group of researchers began to debug the data equipment they were responsible for. Elias Bain also took the initiative to come to the main control computer and began to input relevant instructions step by step. After more than 10 minutes of control, Elias Bain pressed the confirmation button. I saw a big screen in front of everyone. After a long black screen, it finally started successfully. What is clearly playing in the picture are the memory fragments in the men's minds and the false memories they implanted. The entire scene was presented in front of them by the brain-controlled chip in the form of a video player. Everyone started to get excited about it at this time. You must know that editing human brains and modifying memories arbitrarily is something that only gods can do, but they have achieved it like this. This is simply a miracle. Of course, for them, the success of the project means that they can receive a large sum of money. You must know that Pioneer Technology is famous for being generous around the world. The treatment of Pioneer Technology employees was even criticized by other industries because it was once too high. And after they complete this project, they can expect that they will have no worries about luxury cars, mansions, young models and beautiful women. Boss, we succeeded. At this time, Elias Bain on the side also looked at Krynn with the same joy and said, you must know that the rewards and benefits received by senior researchers are much greater than those of basic researchers, not to mention that if they want to rise in the future, they can only rely on projects. It can be said that every successful project of this top secret level is full of gold content. Although Kynn's subordinates valued old people like them very much, as more and more scientific research teams were recruited, they gradually began to compare themselves with each other. After all, there are only so many employees in the company, and everyone wants to use the company's funds to favor their own projects and the treatment of their own personnel. Therefore, every researcher works hard when working on a project. Well, good job. The next step is to perfect the brain control chip as soon as possible. In the future, researchers in the company's first level and above projects will need to have chips implanted. You should be prepared for this. After listening to what Elias Bain said, Krynn patted the veteran who was following him in front of him, and then spoke to him seriously. Don't worry, boss, I have been mentally building up in this area since the day I entered the industry. Not to mention that I have followed you for so long and watched the company step by step to its current scale. There are many technologies, even if I signed a confidentiality agreement, I am still trembling in my heart. Now that I have your help, I feel much more at ease. After hearing Kynn's words, Elias Bain on the side spoke with a look of relief. To be honest, those who engage in scientific research have known the situation they may face in the future from the very beginning of their career. If the project is better, the project is not very high-end, and you can meet your family, but the income is very meager. If the project is high-end, you can't meet your family, but the income is high. There is always a trade-off. Not to mention that his current salary is several times or even 10 times ahead of his peers. He is already very satisfied. The only problem is that he has been worried that as the project research becomes more and more in-depth, even meeting or making phone calls will not be allowed. After all, the technologies involved in these projects are too advanced. Even now, he couldn't imagine that humans could master the technology of invading biological memory or even freely editing it. That's good. Don't worry. When this project is over, I will equip you all with top-notch security. Then you won't be as bored as you are now. Looking at his old subordinate who was extremely cooperative, Krynn patted him on the shoulder happily and said, after all, the person in front of him is also his old subordinate. If the other party does not agree, it will be a bit difficult for Krynn to handle. Immediately, after solving the psychological problems of his subordinates, Krynn came to the console beside him. Carefully, he picked up a chip placed in the middle, which was like a small centipede and was only a few millimeters thick, less than a centimeter. Even if you have a magnifying glass, you can clearly see the complicated integrated circuit devices and exclusive protective films on the wafer. And this is the brain control chip he redeemed from the movie, Upgrade. In the movie, the carrier of artificial intelligence is such a small chip. Different from the cervical vertebra in the original movie, after the improved version, Krynn placed it in the brain, which makes it easier for artificial intelligence to use the chip on the computer as a relay and then control the installer's body. And, after Krynn further optimized its performance, it became a smart chip with limitations. When it comes to company secrets and some special circumstances, if the installer actively wants to tell them, the chip will activate autonomously, forcibly control the host's brain, shut down the language and description functions of the brain, and issue a serious warning. And if it continues, then the destruction process will begin. This small chip will explode to high temperatures, and the effect will be enough to roast the brain. And if the person is kidnapped, the smart chip can also take over the person's body and escape through system calculations. The advantage of this is that the whole process is controlled by robots, and the human body itself will not feel any feelings. In an instant, you can become a master of fighting, boxing, human body veins, etc. And the most important thing is that it can update itself. As long as there is a signal, it can be connected to the internet for self-upgrade. If there is no signal, it is a mobile device. As long as the data stored in the database can be retrieved in time. The reason why Krynn asked Dr. Otto to test the communication project in Miami first was for this step. Because as Krynn unlocks more and more black technologies, more and more researchers will participate. In the early stage, he can screen others one by one for loyalty, but what about the later stage? It's not even certain whether he will still be in charge of the company in the future. Therefore, he must establish a sufficiently secure anti-leakage system, and the brain control chip is one of them. At that time, he will be able to supervise all senior employees of the company in a timely manner. Later, he can also rely on the artificial intelligence provided to buy or even exchange it again. In this way, the various secrets of Krynn Company will once again be faced with iron walls, type of protection. Even if someone disconnects it on site, the smart chip can still enter the disconnection control and make independent judgments without any risk at all. And this is only the early stage. He will also invest a lot of energy and financial resources in upgrading security in the future. By then, both in reality and in spirit, everything will bear the mark of his pioneering technology company. Then, when Krynn came back to his senses again, he heard Elias Baines cry, and then he put down the chip in his hand and walked to the observation room nearby. At this time, the experimental subject also woke up immediately. As a client, Naif Rigo felt the unique smell of disinfectant in the hospital ward permeating the air. The pungent and unpleasant smell also made his throat hurt. Then he subconsciously opened his eyes, and when he entered his eyes, the light from the incandescent lamp on the pure white ceiling above his head made him feel particularly dazzling. Then he subconsciously turned his head, and then he realized that he was lying in the ward, among. Then Naif Rigo wanted to sit up on the bed. Now he only felt dizzy in his mind, as if someone had hit his head. Then he subconsciously wanted to touch his head. And just when his right hand touched his head, he remembered his previous surgery. And the strangest thing is that he found that the PTSD, post-war traumatic emergency disorder, that he cared about most when he came here seemed to be cured. Otherwise, his first habit should be to get the available weapons next to him as soon as possible. And now, as he was thinking, he even felt that he could no longer remember the memory of the battlefield. Are you awake? How do you feel? At this time, before the man could continue thinking, Elias Bain pushed the door open and walked in with two research assistants, and then handed the other person a glass of water and said with a gentle expression, "Thank you. As for the feeling, it has never been better." After seeing the water glass handed over by the other party, the man who had already felt thirsty quickly drank it. After finishing a sip, he felt better. Then he felt the state of his body and faced the familiar person in front of him. The person in charge said with excitement. It can be said that after coming off the battlefield, what he regretted most was not dying there, so that he could even get a generous compensation for his wife and daughter. Instead of sleeping in the room like before, it was just his wife holding her daughter who wanted to come over to play with him at night. Then when he was awakened, he almost killed her with a pistol. You must know that at that moment, if the bullet had strayed a little further, it would have hit 2 lives. He can't even forget that scene, his wife's disbelief, and his daughter's cry. If he really did something wrong, he would even feel like he would die and go to hell without being able to atone for his sins. But fortunately, now, he finally has a second life. Can you still recall your previous memories now? Can you remember some details? Try again to recall the memories of the war. Along with asking questions one after another, Elias Bane also got the answers he wanted from the mouth of the experimenter. It's quite perfect. Trust me, just observe it for a few more days. After the recovery period, you can go back. After leaving this time, your family will usher in a brand new you who will not be troubled by the injuries of war. After passing the testing equipment in his hand to the assistant on the side, Elias Bane said to the man in front of him with a smile. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I'd be homeless a long time ago. After hearing the words of the research leader, the man immediately stood up and said gratefully to the person in front of him. Then, Elias Bane walked out of the door. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, half a month had passed since the last successful brain-controlled chip research. During this period of time, Killian spent a lot of time purchasing a large number of production lines and high-tech instruments for Dubai. Each of these is also among the world's top equipment, and these were purchased when after arriving, he put them all on the research island in Miami. Below it, there is now a research room on the 50th floor underground. Killian liquidated all the previous construction companies and replaced them with Dubai, which had been transformed and had its silicone skin removed. At this moment, there are nearly 100 robots here using various methods. The tool dug down methodically. Each robot here has its own area and content, and the efficiency of everything is many times faster than before. And as more robots are put here in the future, the speed of underground construction will be faster. Soon, the hives thousands of meters deep underground will be restored to this world. Sir, Miss Maya Hansen, I am applying to report to you in the company. At this time, as Dubai's prompt sounded in Killian's earphones, Killian put down his affairs and took the elevator to the entrance of the laboratory. The current island laboratory seems to have changed drastically. Not only has an iron wall been installed around the island, but there are also hundreds of Black Watch members wearing black weapons patrolling the island. And Killian's special car, under such a huge patrol force, drove towards the outskirts of the island with a large number of armed escort convoys. Looking at Killian, who was surrounded by top-notch weapons and powerful equipment, he couldn't help but smile. After confirming the cooperation with Ross, the first Tyrant entered. Later, Killian's application for an arms company and the issue of weapons for personal security were all given the green light by Ross. And after that, as if Ross was worried about his own safety, he completely customized it according to the specifications of the U.S. military general's trip. Even if Killian didn't want to be too high profile, Ross would have arranged an armed Hummer for Killian. During that time, Killian could hardly tell who was selling arms to whom. He also promised that as long as Killian is in danger anywhere, as long as he calls his phone, armed helicopters can be arranged to come to support at any time, and battalion-level units will provide unconditional rescue. By the end of that day, Killian understood why the military had made such a big move after Tony Stark was kidnapped and disappeared by terrorists in the original novel. The military had been looking for him for several months. It was because the place was too big and the terrorists had Obedestin as their mole that they could not be found. Otherwise, with the strength of the military, they might not really be able to overthrow all of Afghanistan. After all, Tony is the biological father of their high-end weapons iterations and updates. It's just that Killian is like this now, after Ross reported the Tyrant's actual combat data to the top military officials. Not long after, it was like this. Along the way, 5 Humvees were clearing the way, and the vehicles were all equipped with officially approved heavy firepower, plus the Black Watch, which was originally an elite force. You must know that for Black Watch, firepower is everything. As long as the firepower is enough, Alex can arrange it head-on. Not to mention the security issues and the military's armed helicopter cover. Looking at everything around him, Killian felt pleased with his previous decision to befriend the military. Just like this, under the envious eyes of passers-by, Killian's motorcade immediately arrived at the company building in the Science and Technology Park. And Maya Hansen also stood at the door waiting for Killian early with a smile on her face. Even before Killian got out of the car, he thoughtfully ran over and opened the car door, smiling respectfully at Killian. Haha, I don't remember when I hired such a top student secretary. Looking at Maya Hansen in front of him, Killian couldn't help but joked after getting out of the car. After all, Maya Hansen looks like this is indeed rare. If the boss needs it, I can actually be a secretary. As long as the boss doesn't fire me. After hearing Killian's words, Maya Hansen also joked. It's just a pity that Maya Hansen didn't grow up with Killian's aesthetics, and the two people only had a pure upper-lower relationship. Okay, take me to see your results. I believe you didn't call me all the way here just to let me listen to your compliments. Killian said as he walked straight inside. Then, under the leadership of Maya Hansen, the two people came to the laboratory. Not surprisingly, in the laboratory, a familiar man was beginning to do corresponding test training under the guidance of a researcher. Mr. Killian, thank you very much for giving me a second chance. Whatever you need me to do next, I can do it. When the other party saw Killian coming in, his eyes lit up for a moment, and then he jogged to the glass door in front of Killian and said excitedly. You must know that before this, he never thought that he could return to a life like a normal person. Although more than a week had passed during this period, and several volunteers at the same time as him had died, he knew that if he wanted to get something, he would have to pay something. Instead of living like a useless person and being bullied in this world, it is better to take a gamble and gamble for a better tomorrow for yourself and your brothers and sisters. But simply speaking, he was lucky. I remember you, 7, right? That's great. Come on, cooperate with the researchers here and help them study the serum's capabilities faster. In this way, in the future we can also help more and more people who are suffering like you before to stand in this world again. Get some rest and don't stress. After looking at Severn in front of the glass door, Killian also smiled gently and then said softly. The whole person is like a kind godfather. At least in the eyes of Severn at this moment, Killian is no different from the bishop who saves the world. After hearing Killian's words, Severn nodded heavily and said, by the way, where are his younger brothers and sisters? Are they all settled? Looking at the man's appearance, Killian immediately asked Maya Hansen on the side. Don't worry, Booze. According to your request, after arranging the best hospital to conduct a comprehensive examination for them, we have arranged a place to live, and the admission procedures have been completed. As expected, they will be able to go to school normally next week. After hearing Killian's words, Maya Hansen also smiled slightly, and then reported. After all, Severn was the first to come to the company to find her at the beginning, and because Killian was not around at that time, she made arrangements for several people's affairs after reporting. Therefore, it can be said that Maya Hansen fully understands the arrangements of Severn's younger brothers and sisters. Very good, remember to arrange everything properly and don't let our own people feel cold. At this time, Killian nodded with satisfaction and warned seriously. Seeing this scene through the glass door, Severn could not help but express bursts of emotion. An ambition to die for his confidant could not be dissipated in his heart for a long time. Okay, 7, let's see what you are capable of now. You must know that the boss is here specifically to see you today. Maya Hansen on the side saw that the conversation was almost finished, so she took the initiative to stand up and said to Severn in front of her. After reacting at this time, Severn nodded vigorously, then returned to the testing room, and started testing step by step under the guidance of the researcher. 7, let the boss see your true abilities. And looking at Severn, who could easily punch tons of punches inside, and even in the intelligence test, which was greatly improved compared to before, at this moment Maya Hansen couldn't wait to speak. After hearing Maya Hansen's words, Severn nodded at this moment, then walked to the completely solid steel pillar on the side, and then held his breath and concentrated. Then I saw Severn opening his eyes again, and his whole body began to emit a terrifying orange light from within. Then in the blink of an eye, Severn's hands turned into entities like magma, and he could only see his hands placed on them. The completely solid steel pillar immediately began to melt into a pool of molten iron at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the liquid continued to flow downwards, even spreading to the soles of Severn's feet. The moment the two came into contact, they emitted the sizzling sound as like the sound of roasting meat dripping with oil. It's just that these are just pains that Severn can bear now. After gritting his teeth and ignoring the problem with the tube feet, he once again increased the temperature in his hands and began to use all his strength to melt the remaining steel columns into molten iron. On the other side, in the observation room outside, the monitoring device that was observing Severn's body in real time also sounded a beeping alarm. "Seven, that's enough, you can stop. You need to cool down now." At this time, after looking at Severn in front of him, whose body temperature was close to the critical value, Maya Hansen's expression immediately changed, and then she came to the microphone and spoke to Severn inside. However, Severn could no longer listen to Maya Hansen's words at this time, gritted his teeth and continued to maintain the current temperature output. It was not easy for him to wait until his savior came over. He still wanted to show off and prove that the other party's previous investment in him was not wrong. How could he give up at the critical moment now? Start the freezing process. Looking at Severn, who could no longer hear what he was saying, Maya Hansen immediately said to the researcher on the side with an anxious look. "Not to mention that the experimental equipment inside is priceless, just saying that the boss is still here, and then seeing the failed experiment, she herself feels unable to hold her head up." "No, wait and see." At this moment, Killian stopped them. Then he looked inside quietly, and Maya Hansen, who was about to say something on the side, also moved her throat, but still didn't speak, and then looked inside. At this moment, the orange-red light on Severn's body was even brighter than before. And from the constant gritting of his teeth and the ferocious look in his eyes, it could be seen that he must be experiencing tremendous pain in his body right now. And it was just as they suspected. After experiencing high-intensity continuous output, the extremis virus in Severn's body has now acquiesced that his body has withstood the initial strengthening, and now, for the virus, now that the host has accepted its entry, then it will lead the host to climax. Immediately under the influence of the extremis virus, every virus in Severn's body began to vibrate at an extremely fast speed, and began to continuously divide itself, then swallow it, and then become a powerful independent individual. In this case, the temperature in Severn's body is now completely out of his control, and the energy in his body is growing at an extremely terrifying speed. Now either his body can adapt to the re-evolved extremis virus, or the extremis virus will bring him to climax and burst into the world's last fireworks. Then, as the extremis virus continued to transform Severn's body, the orange-red light on Severn's body gradually began to become the color of the sun. And when the two Black Watch soldiers beside Killian began to stand in front of him, preparing to block the coming dazzling explosion light curtain, I saw that after Severn roared, the dazzling light that had begun to scatter was retracted again. After the next second, Severn panted and returned to his original state, and he looked at Killian with a smile, indicating that he lived up to expectations, and then fell straight down. At this time, the researchers who had already withdrawn from the laboratory hurriedly opened the room, ran in, and took Severn, who had been severely burned all over his body, into the nutrient solution tank not far away. For extremis virus modifiers, as long as there is enough nutrient solution, no matter how serious the injury is, they can recover quickly. Moreover, there is a constant temperature setting inside, and no matter how high the temperature is, it can be quickly controlled. What's going on with him now? After watching Severn being carried to the nutrient solution cabin not far away, Killian immediately asked Maya Hansen beside him. He broke through. I divide the ultimate transformation, which is now the terminal virus, into 4 stages. The first stage is body modification. After entering the brain, the extremis virus will perform calculations on the brain, and then after confirming the defects existing in the body, it will comprehensively complement and strengthen the host's physical defects and body cells, and it only needs the heart you can recover without being fatally injured, and the energy of the extremis virus in your body will increase day by day. You can use your high temperature ability to a small extent, but you need to take stabilizers regularly to cool down, otherwise it will cause an explosion because the energy of the extremis virus in your body is too high. The second stage is to complete the second transformation after the body has adapted to the rhythm of soaring high-intensity energy. Now it can control the power of flames. The body will be able to freely release thousands of degrees of high temperature, and speed up the body's recovery. Only however, there is a small risk of explosion in the body, and it can still be revived as long as the heart does not stop beating. The third stage is comprehensive strengthening. Fire can be accumulated from the body and then spurred out. It will survive the explosion and have a complete chance of resurrection. As for the fourth stage, according to theoretical calculations, as long as it is combined with relevant optimization, theoretically speaking, immortality can be achieved. 7 is currently in the second stage. The extremis virus has strengthened him in all aspects, and he is also very powerful. Both his willpower and his body's adaptation to the extremis virus are perfectly matched. Plus it even reached 90%. According to theory, he has just received the injection, and his body has only just adapted to the primary modification of the extremis virus. He should not be able to withstand the second independent strengthening of the virus. But this is actually the case. He seems to have an extremely strong belief in survival, coupled with his already strong physical fitness. All of this combined has allowed his body to evolve. To be honest, it seems like he was born for the extremis virus. After hearing Killian's words, Maya Hansen immediately answered. To be honest, at that moment, he was ready to stop immediately. As long as the low temperature was released and the liquid nitrogen freezing started, Severn could directly cool down to a safe position. But in that case, Severn would not be able to break through to the second stage. Now she admires Killian very much, and admires his vision and trust. After all, the explosion of the extremis virus modifier was extremely powerful. Even if they had high-strength explosion-proof glass in front of them, to be honest, she wanted to run away immediately. Because the explosion power of the extremis virus is based on the experimenter. The stronger the experimenter, the greater the power, and Severn, there is no doubt about it. Did you just say stage 4? After hearing what Maya Hansen said, Killian couldn't help but asked curiously. He knew about the third stage. In the original work, Killian could breathe fire freely, and from the huge power of the Mark 42 armor's self-destruction, he could also be reborn from the ashes, which shows how powerful he is. Killian was later killed by Pepper's palm cannon. It was probably because the rebirth brought to the host by the extremis virus was not unlimited. One was that it required recovery time, and the other was that it required energy. What makes Killian curious is the fourth stage. If Maya Hansen is right, the potential of the extremis virus may be even greater. The fourth stage is my biggest theoretical speculation about the extremis virus. You must know that the evolution of organisms can evolve according to changes in the environment, and it is never ending. As long as the extremis virus can evolve to the fourth stage, then humans can truly get rid of disease and pain and live forever. It's just a pity that the fourth phase requires too much data and is too huge. If the third phase is to build a building, then the fourth phase is to build a planet. Even if Dubai is now helping to deduce, but I still can't find the key to the right door. So until now, phase 4 has only remained theoretical. After hearing Killian's words, Maya Hansen spoke quite proactively at this time. For a researcher, the most important thing is to draw a pie, especially one that the boss can trust. Only in this way can there be a steady stream of funds to invest, and what she said is right. As long as the extremis virus continues to evolve, it will definitely reach the point she said. From this point of view alone, she felt that what she said was fine. Not bad, can we mass produce it now? Regarding Maya Hansen's painting, Killian smiled noncommittally, then looked at Severn, who had been placed in the nutrition cabin not far away, and said, to be honest, there is no doubt about the potential of the extremis virus. In the Marvel Universe, its ability can even replace the super soldier serum in both the early and late stages. The only flaw is that it easily causes explosions. As long as this flaw is made up for, it will be the only super soldier serum. And Killian is very hungry for Maya Hansen's fourth phase. Yes, but it depends on the physique of the experimenter. So far, the only one who is most suitable for the extremis virus is Severn. Although others were able to successfully adapt to the extremis virus, they were not as good as him in terms of development or enhancement. And it's easy to explode. I need to perform deep editing in the DNA sequence. After listening to Killian's words, Maya Hansen also reported immediately. God knows how many organisms have exploded in the laboratory during this period, but fortunately, among the few human experimenters, they only conducted it after passing the fitness test of the extremis virus, and it was successful, which can be regarded as fortunately among misfortunes. No need to go to so much trouble. Extract his DNA and start cloning. After confirming that his DNA is highly suitable, we can start full-scale cloning. Then you communicate with Samuel, the leader of the T-Virus project. I want to see a new desperate tyrant. You should be familiar with the T-Virus, right? After listening to Maya Hansen's words, Killian waved his hand immediately, and then said to her beside him. Editing one by one, where is the delay? Since there are high adapters, they can be cloned directly. And since Severn's body cells are so good and can perfectly adapt to the Extremis virus, then Killian also has reasons to believe that he can definitely adapt to the Tyrant plan like the Russian soldier, the prototype of the Tyrant in Resident Evil. Of course, according to your wishes, boss, we will communicate with each other about the virus project during this period. It can be said that we draw a lot of inspiration from each other. She admired Killian Maya Hansen. She originally thought that her Extremis virus project was already very forward-looking. I didn't expect that the other party actually had a project like the T-virus, an ultimate killer weapon. During the visit and exchange of project information, she also gained a better understanding of the power of the T-virus. It can be said that its potential is even greater than her Extremis virus. Even if she hadn't led the development of the Extremis virus, she would have recommended herself to be in charge of the T-virus project. No way, the two projects are very similar, and in terms of biological recovery and longevity, Maya Hansen feels that the T-virus is more practical than her Extremis virus. The only thing that makes her more fortunate is that the enhancer of her Extremis virus has superpowers that the Tyrant developed by the T-virus is far from. Very good, you guys need to communicate with each other and cooperate a lot, you know. You are all senior researchers of the company now. I don't care if you know too much, as long as you focus on doing things for the company. Regarding Maya Hansen's answer, Killian finished speaking with satisfaction and walked out. Now the experiments on T-virus and Extremis virus have made great breakthroughs, and T-virus has also begun to make profits for him. Looking at the rising scores on the system from Tyrant, Killian couldn't help but reveal a playful smile. Otherwise, the most expensive thing is the one that costs nothing. With Killian's promise to provide Tyrant for free for experiments, the military couldn't help but put it into the battlefield. Although it is still restrained and is only used for some remote anti-terrorism missions, Killian believes that as the Tyrant's performance becomes more and more outstanding, the military will sooner or later put it into frontal battlefields. And when the time comes, the reputation points brought by the T-virus will even exceed Baymax. After all, the reputation created on the battlefield is much stronger than in life. In the laboratory, looking at Killian leaving, Maya Hansen couldn't help but touch a place on her head where the hair was obviously sparse. The other party is not worried that they collude and know too much. That is because they are too reassured. After all, if she had such a black technology, she would be able to trust her subordinates. After silently putting down her hand, she sighed, and then she was full of energy and devoted her passion to research work. After all, if those small restrictions are ignored, their current treatment is much better than before. When the project is not tight, they can travel to other places at will. Moreover, the company will reimburse all travel expenses for the entire journey. Not to mention the protection of personal bodyguards and the countless salaries and bonuses now. It can be said that if she is now completely considered an urban white-collar worker. It's just that she wasn't interested in those. After playing for a day or two, she returned to the laboratory. Instead of facing those colorful and fancy clothes, she preferred to face the DNA sequence, which was all explored and edited by herself. The feeling is simply too good. At the same time, on the other side, Killian, who had returned to the company, also called several important subordinates into the conference room. Okay, let's report back. How is the situation? After seeing everyone arrive, Killian asked. Let me go first, boss. The news company we built, its subsidiary website, Pioneer Browser, has now been officially put into use. After preliminary return visits, user feedback is good and there will be no problems. At the same time, the instant messaging product, Little Blue Bird, has also been put into use, and the number of users is also increasing steadily. At this time, Barry Bernard, a middle-aged man with glasses not far away, immediately took the initiative to report after hearing Killian's words. Well, the social section of the internet is still blank right now. I will specifically approve a sum of funds for you, and your main task is to use it to attract new customers and then keep them. Do you understand? For browsers and news companies, these are what Killian wants to strive for. Not only does he have to flourish in both people's livelihood and the military, but he must also firmly hold the dominance of public opinion on the internet, and this is the right time. It was also a time when major news colleagues only focused on physical newspapers, and no one else came to carve up this cake. So Killian had to eat them before they could react. Boss, our touch holographic projection technology has been developed and the production line has been assembled and can be used on a large scale at any time. On the other side, a former researcher deputy of Killian also stood up and reported. Because the touchable holographic projection technology itself is worth 1,000 reputation points, but its impact on various industries also has extremely important strategic value, so Killian also exchanged it for his subordinates to study. Boss, the 4G network and smartphones have also been completed. This is the finished product. Take a look. At this time, Dr. Alto also started to report after several people finished reporting, while handing the phone to Killian. After receiving the mobile phone handed over by Dr. Otto, Killian also began to study it. 32G running memory plus 1T memory, in addition to its own satellite communication, disaster warning, emergency call for help, and equipped with a holographic projection probe. It can be said that such a small mobile phone is already the pinnacle of technology in the next 30 years. Of course, the premise is that Tony doesn't run into the mobile phone industry like crazy and stir up trouble. While Killian was operating it, everyone present looked at the phone's sci-fi appearance and powerful functions, and couldn't help but have a look of envy in their eyes. You must know that they are still using flip phones or skateboard phones, and brand new touchscreen phones like the one in Killian's hand have never been heard of before, let alone seen. And each of those functions is enough to support a small company. Very well, Alto, you did a great job, far beyond my expectations. After playing with the various functions of the phone, Killian looked at Dr. Otto in front of him and said with satisfaction. To be honest, he just wanted the other party to make a plain copy of Apple's 15-level smartphone for him at first. After all, he had given him all kinds of technologies, and Dr. Alto only needed to choose the best combination among them. But what Killian didn't expect was that the other party could even integrate the holographic projection function that his company was developing. This was beyond his expectation. At this moment, Killian once again had a deep understanding of the saying that talent is the driving force for all development. This time, everyone here will receive an additional 30 million bonus for each project, which will be allocated by the person in charge. Oh, by the way, Alto, when the time comes, if you produce 100 units of this mobile phone, it will be an internal reward for the project staff here. After silently putting Alto's cell phone into his pocket, Killian said to everyone with a smile on his face. Boss, you are simply God. After hearing Killian's words, everyone couldn't help but speak. Okay, now I need you to maintain the current situation. Barry Bernard, we will start the product launch of our conference in Miami next Wednesday. You are responsible for publicity and venue layout. Lisa will be in charge of hosting it then. After listening to everyone's compliments, Killian continued speaking seriously. Boss, me. However, Lisa herself couldn't help but be stunned after hearing that Killian actually nodded to her. She originally thought that her task was to be responsible for the product sales, but she didn't expect that her boss would also leave the press conference to her. You know, that is the responsibility of the president. Well, besides, as you are all here, Lisa will serve as the company's VP Vice President from today on, responsible for the company's external and sales affairs. Formal notification will be issued by the Human Resources Department after the meeting. Looking at Lisa, who was in a daze in front of him, Killian immediately nodded and said with certainty. After Killian finished speaking, everyone present also applauded. As a newcomer, Dr. Otto naturally had nothing to say, and no one else knew him. The other two are old employees who came with Killian, and their promotion levels are not slower than Lisa's. Not to mention that when Lisa was Killian's secretary at the beginning, she often communicated with them and had a good impression of each other. And having a well-informed and good character person as your boss will be much better than having the boss go out and find some who knows what kind of glamorous person to be the vice president. So the two of them cooperated very well and started to congratulate Lisa. After seeing the scene, Killian nodded, and after announcing the end of the meeting, he walked out. And in the next few days, Pioneer Technologies' product launch conference was also approved by Killian. With the cooperation and support of the company's operating department and other important figures from all parties, it began to proceed in an orderly manner. As just one day passed, a piece of news completely exploded on the internet. Pioneer Technology Company will hold a product warm-up conference in a week, and by then there will be world-leading smartphones, touch-enabled holographic projections and 4G signals. At this time, various industries also received invitations to the press conference. Such a piece of news, in this era when the internet has just started, is like throwing an atomic bomb into the water, which is extremely shocking. And not only that, major companies and government agencies in the United States have also forwarded it online. And with the blessing of this butterfly effect, it can be said that it is now known to the entire internet. For a time, news about Pioneer Technology's press conference was endless, and every media outlet was frantically expressing their own opinions, hoping to gain enough popularity before this wave of carnival came. Shocked, the epic-making LCD mobile phone is about to be released. Is it a commercial gimmick or is it real? Single quote. Touchscreen mobile phones, unprecedented innovation and subversion, are they the arrival of the future era or a flash in the pan? Single quote. Science fiction movies come into reality, and holographic projection technology can be controlled, which will subvert your cognition. Single quote. In 3 minutes, I will take you to understand the development history of Pioneer Technology Company. Single quote. The nightmare of mobile phone merchants. With the arrival of 4G signals, Pioneer Technology began to enter the communications industry. Single quote. Can Pioneer Technology Company, a dark horse that appears out of thin air, be able to provide us with technology that will lead the future technological craze like Baymax? Single quote. Pioneer Technology Company will start official phone reservations on the internet and offline stores. Single quote. In the hotspot of the mobile phone industry, Pioneer Technology is recruiting agents. Single quote. At this moment, these topics dominate the front pages of all portal websites. And the most important one, and what many businessmen are paying attention to, is the reservation model created by Krynn. You must know that in today's era, people still stick to the concept of handing over money and exchanging with one hand. Krynn's Pioneer Technology suddenly came up with a pre-sales marketing model. At this moment, many businessmen are eagerly waiting to see their jokes. After all, there have never been such stupid people since ancient times. To put it bluntly, if there are more people buying it by then, millions or tens of millions of dollars, and each person costs several $1,000s, then hundreds of billions of dollars will be taken away directly. Facing such a huge amount of money, any normal person can imagine it, so at this moment, everyone thinks of Pioneer Technology as a young guy who doesn't know the cruelty of them all. And at the same time, Apple Inc. in Cupertino, California. At this moment, the president, Steve Jobs, is quietly watching these sudden hot searches on the computer screen. And there are many people discussing it under every hot search. In particular, there were discussions about pictures of mobile phones, and every comment seemed to break his heart. On the sofa not far in front of him, all the key members of the company were sitting. At this time, with Pioneer Technology taking the lead in launching the first shot in the mobile phone industry, Apple's executives could not sit still. What do you think about this matter? Does this thing have any meaning? At this moment, Jobs raised his head and looked at the R&D director and scientific research team in front of him. He tapped the finished electronic equipment just taken out of the laboratory without caring and asked. Looking at Jobs tapping the electronic product in his hand, the director of the R&D department looked distressed. You must know that even if this is the case, this is the first music player they have developed. The only difference between the two is that if all the gimmicks released by Pioneer Technology are true, then there is really no comparison between the two. It's hard to say, sir, that brand new touchscreen phone. To be honest, it all sounds too weird. It's like I'm sleeping and then the next day someone tells me that we're entering the interstellar age, and unless he has alien technology, it's, to be honest, unbelievable. At this time, the head of the scientific research team on the side was the first to speak. After all, this is a completely black technology. With 4G communication technology and the incredible operation screen without any buttons, all of this is like something out of a science fiction movie. To be honest, I also agree with Vidal's point of view. As for these technologies, if they were released at random, I might believe them, but they are all collected on a small mobile phone. Sorry, as far as I think, the technical difficulty of these is at least several decades ahead of the world's technology, so this is unlikely. Perhaps, this may be a fundraising method used by Pioneer Technology. Want to raise funds in advance and run away. After all, I can write a lot of this kind of propaganda words with my eyes closed. I also agree. It's not like this has never happened before. Seriously, would anyone be willing to give me money first? Believe me, if I did this, even my grandma would rise from her grave and give me a slap in the face. And as everyone responded one by one, Jobs finally understood what he was doing and didn't quite believe it. In fact, he didn't want to believe it. After all, the music player they had just invested hundreds of millions of dollars in developing only had 5 gigabytes of memory. The advertised running memory of a mobile phone is a fraction more than theirs. This is simply like using anti-aircraft cannons to swat mosquitoes. The country's technology has advanced to the interstellar age, but they are still beating weapons with rocks. But even if he still didn't believe it, Jobs still silently withdrew his gaze when he saw Dubai, a personal health consultant placed downstairs in the company for the safety of employees. Even this kind of black technology robot can be produced and sold on a large scale, with the appearance of not caring about others stealing and cracking it. In other words, a small mobile phone does not seem so shocking. Now our question is, what next? Should we give up on transformation and make our computers with peace of mind, or should we continue to compete with Pioneer Technology? Immediately after retracting his gaze, Jobs looked at the people in front of him and said, "To be honest, their computers are very good. Many government departments and enterprises even purchase their computers. With their continuous marketing and promotion, the terms high-end, classy, reliable, safe and connotative have gradually been firmly attached to them, on their computers. And because they have established a firm foothold in the computer industry, they now want to enter the audio equipment, that is, MP3. Their next step is to decide whether to fully enter the mobile phone industry based on feedback. But now that all this has just begun, the monster Pioneer Technology has jumped out and strangled everything in the cradle." Jobs: "I think so, although Pioneer Technology may be all fake. But, if it is true, then unless we can withstand the continuous investment of profits into production and research and development in the next 20 years, it will be possible to catch up with their current released products. We are indeed too weak now." At this time, a manager also spoke his mind. Although they are leaders in the new technology industry, they are only worth tens of billions of dollars in market value now. There is a huge gap compared to flagship companies like Pioneer Technology, which are already worth hundreds of billions. Not to mention the insurmountable gap in technology itself, they cannot beat it simply in terms of money-burning investment. The only way to break the situation is to find another way and switch to other hot projects. How about we try to cooperate with Pioneer Technology and become their agent? At this time, a director of the publicity department on the side hesitated for a while and then expressed his opinion. Then, after seeing everyone looking at him with doubtful expressions, the man followed up and said, "From the current information, it is not difficult to see that the other party's propaganda this time is probably true, and ours the product also crashed with them. So why don't we just switch to agency sales? You must know that since the other party's mobile phone has such powerful functions as advertised, it will definitely take the high-end route, which is the same route as our computer products. In this case, the cooperation between our two companies can be said to be a win-win situation. First, we have existing channels. Almost all users who buy our computers can fully purchase their mobile phones, and as a channel provider, we can also sell them perfectly. Second, if we get the agency rights, we can observe their smartphones at close range and accumulate rich experience for us if we want to take this road in the future. You could say we have a giant ahead of us, and now we are just a toddler. And what we have to do is grow as much as possible during this period and learn from the giants." After the man spoke, everyone present couldn't help but fell into deep thought. After all, the technological gap between the two is too big. Not to mention that their company has just started. Even if it wasn't, according to the current situation, it would really be a head-on collision. That is only a dead end. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.